My boyfriend is hiding my stuff. My boyfriend keeps hiding my things, and I have absolutely no idea why. We've been dating for 5 months, and about 3 weeks ago, he moved in with me. His apartment was flooded and needed repairs. Since my roommate is spending some time abroad, I told him he could stay here for about 4 to 6 weeks. By then, his place should have been ready again. At first, everything was great. He used to get jealous a lot before, mostly when we went out separately once or twice a week, but since moving in, he seemed to calm down. Unfortunately, a new and much stranger problem appeared. It might sound petty, but it's driving me insane. Ever since he moved in, my things have started disappearing, only to reappear a day or two later in the exact same spot. I'm not talking about misplacing my keys or forgetting where I put my phone. I know these things are gone. I check, they're not there, and then suddenly they're back. It started with small stuff, documents, little household items, food. For example, I like taking chocolate to work, so I always keep a box of it at home. A few days after he moved in, one morning all the chocolate was gone. I asked if he ate it, he said no. That evening it was suddenly back in the cupboard. When I asked again, he just shrugged and said, "Maybe you didn't see it earlier." It was a whole box of 12 bars. There's no way I just missed it. At first, I thought it was some kind of weird prank, but he gets angry whenever I bring it up. Sometimes it's stuff that isn't even mine, like things I borrowed from friends or important documents I needed for work. It's driving me mad. I'm not crazy. Every time I try to talk about it, he insists on making things up to start drama. Why on earth would I make that up? Extra context. We met through mutual friends about 2 months before we started dating. I wasn't planning to get into a relationship. I had just gotten out of one, but he completely swept me off my feet. Gifts, handwritten letters, constant attention. None of my exes were ever like that. Within a month, we were officially together. He's always been a bit controlling, though. He hates when I go out with my friends, especially since most of them are single. He says he just doesn't want me around bad influences. Sometimes we'd argue about it, but lately, since living together, those fights have been less frequent. First update. First of all, thank you to everyone who reached out with advice and support. I got so many messages asking if I'm okay, and I really appreciate it. After reading your comments and doing some research about gaslighting, I got scared, really scared. So many of you pointed out red flags I had been ignoring. When I looked back, I realized how fast everything between us moved. I wasn't even looking for a relationship, but he love-bombed me into one. He'd get upset if I didn't say I love you quickly enough, if I didn't want to introduce him to my family, if I didn't want to have unprotected sex. When I refused to book an expensive trip with him, he got angry. He hated when I went out with my friends, especially since most of them are single. He says he just doesn't want me around bad influences. Sometimes we'd argue about it, but lately, since living together, those fights have been less frequent. One of you pointed out something that made everything click. Almost every missing item was related to me going somewhere. Gifts for friends, keys to my parents' house, documents for my semester abroad. He didn't want me to leave. After that realization, I ordered a hidden camera online. It took 4 days to arrive. In the meantime, I told him that my roommate got an unexpected job offer and would be coming home early, so he'd need to move out. He got angry, of course, but I stayed calm and said there was nothing I could do. The next day, he claimed he'd talked to his landlord and could move back next weekend because the repairs finished early. I'm honestly not sure there ever were any repairs. That night, he asked if I wanted to move in with him afterward. Said, "You hate your roommate anyway, right?" I never said that. I just smiled and said, "Maybe in June." He looked thrilled. While waiting for the camera, another thing happened. A book I bought for my dad vanished. I casually mentioned it to my boyfriend. The next morning, it was gone. Later that day, he asked me on the way to work, "Did you take the book with you?" That question alone made my skin crawl. I just said, "What book?" He looked confused, said, "The one for your dad." I acted like I had no idea what he was talking about. That night, the book was magically back on my desk. I said nothing. 2 days later, the camera finally arrived. While he was at the gym, I set it up and placed an important envelope on my desk. A few hours later, it disappeared. The next morning, it was back. When I watched the footage, I saw exactly what I'd expected. Him walking by, grabbing the envelope, putting it in his gym bag, and returning it later. Seeing it on video didn't even shock me. I already knew, but that was enough proof for me to make a plan. I didn't confront him. I just needed to get him out of my apartment safely and quietly. To be honest, I was terrified of how he might react, and by then I had already decided I would end things as soon as possible. The camera showed what he was doing, but not why, and I knew he'd never admit anything. What bothered me most was realizing I'd probably never know his reason.
On his last night before moving back to his repaired apartment, I told him I wanted to watch an old movie, Gaslight. Thanks to everyone who recommended it. Great choice, by the way. He watched it with me, barely saying a word. I kept commenting about how unrealistic the story was and how the main guy was a total psychopath. I expected some reaction, but he just sat there, visibly uncomfortable. That Sunday, he packed up his stuff and left. My brother helped me hire a locksmith to change all the locks. Once that was done, I texted my boyfriend, well, my ex. I told him it was over, that I didn't want him contacting me again, and that I was genuinely sorry he felt the need to hide my things just to keep things interesting. Since then, he hasn't stopped calling. I don't answer, and I won't. Maybe it wasn't the most dramatic or heroic ending. I could have confronted him with the video, but I just didn't want the drama or confrontation. I wanted it done, quietly and permanently. If I learned anything from all this, it's that I need to stop rushing into relationships. For the past 7 years, I've jumped from one long-term relationship straight into another. I think it's time I stay single for a while and focus on school. For now, I'm staying with my brother for a few weeks and plan to change my number soon. I still can't explain why he did it. Maybe it was some kind of compulsion, maybe a twisted joke, or maybe he just wanted to mess with me for control. I'll probably never know. Every message he sent says the same thing, that he has no idea what I'm talking about, that he never took anything. Final update. I wish I could say things ended peacefully, but they didn't. After I broke up with him, I ignored all his calls and endless texts, but I still read most of them. For the first few days, they were full of apologies and begging. I love you. I miss you. I don't know what you think I did, but I swear I didn't do anything wrong. Whatever anyone told you, it's not true. Please give me another chance. Then the tone shifted. No wonder everyone leaves you. You're pathetic. I hate you. Don't even think about coming back. There won't be a second chance. For your own sake, pray we never see each other again. That week, I finally blocked his number. But strange things started happening. Friends began calling, asking if I was okay, saying they'd heard I broke up with him to focus on my mental health. I never told anyone that. Twice I showed up at work only to find my coworkers surprised to see me. Apparently, my doctor had called in saying I wouldn't be coming because I was unwell. Then my mom got a Facebook message from him. They'd never met. He pretended to be a worried friend asking if I was okay after my recent breakdown. My family didn't buy it, but explaining it at work was much harder. After about 3 weeks staying at my brother's place, I thought it was safe to go back to my apartment. Big mistake. On my second night home, I saw him outside, standing across the street, staring at the building. Then I saw him again 2 days later, and again after that. A week later, someone started ringing my doorbell at 3 a.m. It happened 5 nights in a row. Then I found little folded notes outside my door, each with a small drawing of a flame. That was the point where I realized he had somehow gotten into the building. I was terrified to even leave the apartment. Eventually, I packed my things and moved back in with my brother and his family. My roommate, who's still abroad, didn't take it well. She was furious when she found out I'd changed the locks without telling her, and even angrier when I said I planned to move out entirely. I get it, it wasn't what we had agreed on. Looking back, I should have kept her more in the loop. I got permission from her parents, who actually owned the apartment, but I never spoke to her directly. I still feel awful for letting him live there at all. I also went to the police to get a restraining order. I had no idea how complicated that process would be. They needed not only proof that he was following me, but also evidence that he was an actual threat to my safety. After hours of waiting, and thanks to my sister-in-law's patience, I finally got the order. The good news, there's at least one bright spot. I got accepted into a study abroad program that starts in October. I'll be leaving in August, maybe traveling a bit before classes begin. I've already joined a Facebook group with other exchange students, and it feels good knowing I won't be alone. When I get back, I'll find a small place of my own.
My wife betrayed me after 33 years of marriage. After 33 years together, my wife cheated on me. She begged for forgiveness, but I told her to pack her things, and I filed for divorce. We'd been married for over 3 decades. 2 grown children, 2 grandchildren, our pride and joy. We met back in the 80s at a nightclub where I worked. One date led to another. 2 months later, we moved in together, and 2 years after that, we got married. Life was good. Work, kids, laughter, everything felt solid. As the years went on, my active job turned into a desk one, and I gained a lot of weight, so much that intimacy became difficult. I'd get asthma attacks halfway through. Still, we stayed loyal. I'd been cheated on before, so we both agreed that infidelity was something that could never be forgiven. I truly believed we would grow old together. After 20 years of a mostly dead bedroom, I decided to change. I lost 80 kilograms in 2 years and even had surgery to remove excess skin. I had 3 reasons. I wanted to live long enough to see my grandkids grow, I wanted to be healthy, and I wanted to bring passion back into our marriage. It worked. For the past 2 years, we were intimate several times a week. She seemed genuinely happy. I could see it in her face, in her body. We were enjoying life again. She told me she loved me every day, and I always told her the same. I never cheated, and I truly believed she didn't either. A few weeks ago, she went on a trip with her 2 sisters to another state. I didn't mind. I trusted her completely. We always had open phones and shared our locations for safety reasons, not out of control. Trust was never an issue. When I lost weight, women started paying attention to me again, but I never acted on it. I was happily married. My wife sometimes said she felt insecure because I had become the attractive one while she'd gained some weight. But I didn't care about that. I loved her in every form. I told her she was beautiful every single day. Then came the call that shattered my life. I was driving home from work when she called, crying hysterically. She asked if her sister had talked to me. I said no. Then she blurted out through sobs that she had cheated on me, that she'd slept with another man. She kept saying she didn't know what came over her, that it was a horrible mistake, that she hated herself. Apparently, she and her sisters had gone drinking. A married couple they met joined them. After the bar closed, her sisters went to bed, and she, drunk, went with that couple to their hotel room to keep drinking. According to her, they complimented her, told her she was sexy and that I was lucky. Then the man started touching her, while his wife encouraged it. They told her no one would ever know, just to enjoy it. She claimed it felt like she wasn't even herself, but she still went through with it. She slept with that man while his wife watched. In the morning, she woke up in bed with both of them and ran back to her room. Her sister saw her leaving and forced her to confess what happened. The sister told her she had to tell me or she would. That's when my wife called, sobbing and begging me to forgive her. I sat in my car in shock, feeling my heart break apart. 33 years gone in one night. I hung up and turned off my phone. For 2 days, I shut out the world. I cried for the woman I thought I knew, for the life we'd built, for the future that no longer existed. My entire world had collapsed. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were hundreds of messages from her and her sisters. The last one said she was driving home. My kids had been trying to reach me too. She had told them she was worried about me. I called my kids and told them the truth. I told them that no matter how angry they felt, she was still their mother and their children's grandmother. That didn't change. Before she came back, I left her a note telling her to pack her things and go stay with her mother.
Then I sent her a message, the last one I'll ever send. I told her we're getting divorced. I don't want details, I don't want explanations. She made her choice. The pain is unbearable. I never thought love like ours could die this fast. Update 1. Our dead bedroom wasn't completely dead, but compared to the last 2 years, it felt like night and day. Before my injury, I served in the Army until I was medically discharged. After that, my wife and I started a small business together. Before speaking to her, I talked to her sister and brother-in-law, and what they told me didn't match my wife's version at all. My kids were devastated, but they wanted to support me. I told them to not hate their mother. She still loves them, even if she destroyed our marriage. But the truth turned out even uglier than her confession. She hadn't been honest, not even when she came clean. Her sister told me the real story. Apparently, she said she loved me, that she didn't plan it, but claimed that our renewed sex life had somehow awakened her, that she wanted to explore what she'd missed. She said she used to feel the attractive one in the marriage, and now that I'd become the confident one, she felt insecure. She wanted to feel desired again. She swore it was the first and only time that it wasn't planned, but it was. The man she slept with and his wife were our business clients from another state. She'd been talking to them on the phone for months. They arranged to meet during her trip. So no, it wasn't a drunken mistake. It was premeditated. She's coming over today to talk. She's terrified, and she should be. I already know what I'll tell her. She chose this. She chose to destroy everything we had. Now she and everyone else will live with the consequences. Our marriage is over. And to the few people who told me to stay strong, thank you. It means more than you know. Update 2, the final one. To everyone accusing me, you've got your own demons, so good luck dealing with them. This will be my last update for a while. Writing this out has actually made me feel lighter, as if I finally exhaled after holding my breath for weeks. I talked to my wife yesterday. After so many years together, we'd never been able to sleep without the other next to us, not for decades. But last night, for the first time, I actually slept peacefully without her. She came home looking like hell, tired, guilty, terrified, and with freshly dyed hair, as if that could somehow change who she was. Normally, my heart would have softened instantly, and I would have rushed to comfort her. Not this time. I was sitting at the kitchen table when she walked in. She burst into tears and tried to hug me, mumbling how sorry she was, how she'd ruined everything. I raised my hand and told her to not touch me, just to sit down. I asked if she wanted coffee. She nodded. I poured 2 mugs and sat back down. She kept staring at me like a frightened child. When she started to speak, I stopped her, told her to just listen and answer when asked. I said, "This is over. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." I'd already decided, but I wanted to hear some truth from her before it all ended. I told her I had spoken to her sister and even to the other couple. A lie. I wanted to see how she'd react. Inside, I felt strange, sad, angry, disappointed, but calm. That calmness scared her more than anything. I asked, "How many times?" She said it was physical only once, but twice more over video calls. She explained how it started, with flirty work chats that got out of hand. Eventually, the man's wife joined in, and after a few months, they started doing explicit video calls. My wife admitted she'd always fantasized about being watched by another woman, and they were more than happy to make that happen. She cried while saying it, repeating that it all went too far, that she knew it was wrong, and that the danger of it made it even more exciting. I stopped her mid-sentence. I didn't want his excuses. After a long silence, she finally admitted that when she met them on that trip, it was planned all along. I asked if she'd ever intended to tell me. She said, "No, it was just something I wanted to experience once and forget about it forever."
I told her that was complete garbage, that cheating once or 1,000 times didn't matter. The result was the same. I said the only people she'd hurt now were our children and grandchildren if she kept lying. Then I told her straight,
I didn't believe a word of what she said, and it didn't even matter anymore. That's when she realized I wasn't going to work on the marriage. She started begging me to stay, promising to do anything, even said she'd let me sleep with other women if that's what it took. She kept crying that it would never happen again. I told her to stop, that she'd already humiliated herself enough. I said if I ever slept with another woman, that would mean the marriage was already over, and it was. When she reached for my hand, I pulled back. I told her I would never touch her again, not out of cruelty, but because the woman I married no longer existed. She died the night she chose to betray me, and worse, when she planned it. All the beautiful memories, our first house, raising our kids, laughing together, are now just that, memories. I told her we'd sell the house and business, split everything evenly. She could keep the car, I'd take the truck and the motorcycle. She could even take the cats. Then I made it clear, no calls, no texts, no contact unless it's about the kids or grandkids. I'll handle everything through the lawyers. She started crying again, saying I was cold and emotionless. I told her no, I was just honest. Her choices left nothing inside me but emptiness. She destroyed everything I loved. After that, I left her alone to pack her things. I went to my daughter's house, played with my granddaughter, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. When I came back home, my wife was gone. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Update 3. It's been 5 insane weeks since my soon-to-be ex-wife threw our marriage in the trash. I've had plenty of time to think, and I still know I made the right choice. I could never trust her again. The thought of touching her makes me sick. She made the decision to cheat, thinking she'd get away with it. She didn't. She's still living with her mother. I've been getting the house ready to sell. We lived here for 20 years, so there was a lot of stuff to clear out, but it's done. The house is on the market, and we already have a couple of interested buyers. The business was sold last week to one of our longtime clients. People say divorce is tough, but until you're in it, you don't realize how draining it really is. Legally, we have to live separately for a full year and 1 day before filing, then another few months before it becomes official. Only after that can the property division be finalized. By the time that happens, I intend to have nothing left tying me to her. Once she signs the last paper, I'll finally be free to move forward. Her mindset, though, is a whole different story. Update 4. My son only spoke to her once, and judging by how it went, it wasn't a pleasant conversation. Just so it's clear, my kids are adults with their own families. I told him that time would heal things, that despite everything, she's still his mother, and she was a good one. I don't want her actions to destroy their bond. My daughter, on the other hand, still keeps in touch with her. She's ashamed of what her mother did, but is helping her cope with the divorce. My daughter has always been straightforward. She doesn't sugarcoat anything and makes it clear how badly her mother screwed up. As for my soon-to-be ex-wife, she lives in complete denial. She truly believes that I'll eventually calm down and forgive her. She thinks that all the years we shared will make me reconsider. When she came over to sign the papers for the house sale, she said I'd change my mind, that I still loved her, that once I realized everything, she'd become the best wife, and that we'd still grow old together. She said this was just a bump in the road. I was stunned. I looked at her and told her she was delusional. She lied, cheated, and betrayed me in the most disgusting way. She let another man inside her while his wife watched. How could she ever believe I'd want to touch her again? She started crying, saying she knew she shouldn't have done it, that she didn't even realize what she was doing, that it wasn't even that good. I told her to shut up. I didn't care whether it was good or bad. That wasn't the point. The point was, she still did it. I told her there's absolutely zero chance of reconciliation. I want nothing to do with her anymore. I can't wait to finally start living a life that doesn't include her. She's living in denial, pretending she still has some kind of hold over me, but she doesn't. She lost that right the moment she destroyed our marriage with lies and infidelity. This entire situation is the result of her choices. She knew what she was risking before she did it, so she doesn't get to act naive now. Funny thing, lately I've been getting a lot of attention from other women. I'm not looking for a relationship right now, but it's nice to know I have options if I ever decide to. When my ex found out that some female friends had stopped by to bring me dinner or just chat, she got jealous. She said I should let off some steam and that she'd be waiting for me when I was done. God, how naive can she be? I'm still full of emotions, anger, hate, disgust, loss, sadness. But I'm a strong man. I'll get through this. My main goal now is to cut off all financial ties with her and finally move on. 3 months later, final update. It's been 3 months. The divorce process is still ongoing, but most of the hard work is already done. The business has been sold, the house too, and legally we're living separately. I just have to wait out the required period before the divorce is finalized. Everything we owned has been split evenly. I bought 2 small apartments near my grandkids, one for me to live in and another I rent out. My son and daughter live in different states with their families, so this way I can visit them whenever I want. I'm working again. A former competitor offered me a part-time position, and I took it. It gives me plenty of time to actually enjoy life again. A few weeks ago, I just got on my motorcycle and rode without a destination, stopped for coffee, watched people, took in the world around me. In the evenings, I'd stop by a pub, have a couple of beers, then ride off again the next day. And honestly, I'm surprised by how easy it feels to talk to women again. I've slept with a couple, nothing serious, no emotions, just fun and physical connection. And I feel free. Some people have asked if I ever reached out to the couple she cheated with. No, and I never will. It wasn't their decision, it was hers. They mean nothing to me. The best revenge on a cheater is indifference, moving on and living well. Sure, the memories still come back sometimes, but they no longer break me. My ex, though, still lives in a fantasy world. She honestly believes that when I get tired of being alone, I'll take her back. I've made it clear, our marriage is over, forever. I told her I don't care what she does or who she's with now, just like she no longer has any right to care about what I do. My daughter told me her mother is still in denial, ashamed and broken. She's even asked our daughter to convince me to come back. I said that will never happen. She's not ashamed of what she did. She's ashamed she got caught, and that I actually walked away instead of forgiving her. Life isn't what I expected, but for the first time in years, I'm genuinely looking forward to the future.
My narcissistic sister tried to hurt me, but for years my family brushed it off like it was just a joke. Now, though, everyone is finally starting to see how unstable her behavior really is. A bit of background. I'm the second youngest out of 5 kids. I have 2 older brothers and 1 older sister. Let's call her X. There's a 5-year age gap between us, so we never really had that close sisterly bond growing up. To her, I always felt more like an inconvenience. Anytime it was my turn to choose something, like a movie, she would get upset. Even back then, she had this strong need to control everything and everyone around her, and honestly, it only got worse with time. I'm about to turn 19, and X is now 24. Earlier this year, in June, her boyfriend, let's call him Y, proposed to her during a family beach day. He had set up this big romantic display with white letters made of rose petals before we even arrived. She was ecstatic and immediately said yes. My parents and siblings were all thrilled. Our youngest sibling is only 4, so he didn't really understand what was going on. And that's when the chaos started. From the moment she got engaged, X basically turned into a full-on dictator bride, with my mom backing her up. Here's a list of her rules. All bridesmaids must pay for their own dresses, a soft pink gown costing $300, plus shoes, hair, and makeup. Every bridesmaid must attend all pre-wedding events, including a spa bachelorette party, $800 per person, and a weekend trip to Toronto with a 2-night stay at the Fairmont, $1,000. Guests must pay a $150 deposit to attend the wedding banquet or they lose their spot. Gifts must come strictly from her registry. Anything else will be returned. Bridesmaids must visit a beauty salon every 6 weeks at their own expense to maintain perfect hair and skin for photos. Tattoos must be hidden. Dresses must cover the neck, wrists, and ankles. Only the bride is allowed visible tattoos or bright hair. Everyone else must keep natural hair or wear a wig, again at their own cost. Dresses are only available up to size 10. Anyone bigger has to lose weight. I'm a size 12, and she straight up called me fat and even gave me a keto diet book. No one, including vendors, is allowed to contact the bride or groom directly. Everything must go through the bridesmaids. She even created a shared wedding email and expects us to just know what's acceptable without asking. We're also expected to track guest payments and gifts, reminding people about deposits and monitoring what they plan to give. Talking about all of this out loud made me realize how insane the situation actually is. I'm seriously considering speaking to a therapist at my university and possibly moving into a dorm. I even called my aunt, who's also my godmother, and she told me straight up that my mom's behavior is just as concerning. She advised me to have a serious talk with my parents, not only about the wedding, but also about how they've always favored my sister. She also said she's ready to step in if things escalate. Some people pointed out that money plays a huge role in situations like this. If my sister doesn't come back down to reality, people like me simply won't be able to participate in her wedding. I tried explaining that to her, but she refuses to listen. The thing is, her fiancé earns over $120,000 a year in IT, and she makes around $100,000 as an accountant. They could easily afford all of this themselves. At that point, I told both my mom and my sister that I wouldn't be involved unless someone covered all my expenses. My mom keeps pretending everything is fine, but my sister is acting like a spoiled diva, and that approach clearly isn't working. Ironically, her fiancé is very calm, which is probably why they work as a couple. He's the only one who can actually calm her down. About the $150 entry fee, my family tried to convince me it's some kind of Italian tradition, but I found out that's completely false. I'll have to explain to my mom that I simply don't have that kind of money. Honestly, my sister could have just invited me as a regular guest. She already has 13 bridesmaids, 12 plus one maid of honor. The number comes from the groom's close group of 13 brothers from his class, which apparently means a lot to him. When I confronted my sister, she told me it was my responsibility as her sibling to save money for this. Meanwhile, my parents are already planning to spend around $100,000 on the wedding, so apparently giving me $2,000 for expenses is too much. I'm also starting university soon, which will cost around $177,000. Then I found out something shocking. My parents had actually set aside $25,000 for each of us kids. The deal was, once we turned 19 and started university, that money would be ours to use. My dad even confirmed it with bank statements. He was about to transfer my share to me. But after my sister got engaged, things changed. Apparently, she had told my mom she always felt like a neglected child. She's used that phrase before, and I think it really got to my mom. Feeling guilty, my mom decided she could redirect money from all the kids' accounts to fund the wedding. My two older brothers never used their money because the military covers their expenses, so that's $50,000. Add my sister's $25,000 and my $25,000, and suddenly there's $100,000 for her wedding. My mom decided since my education would cost $177,000 anyway, she could just take my $25,000. And of course, my sister pushed this idea. She knows exactly how to manipulate situations like this. There's also deeper history behind all of this. After I was born, my mom suffered severe postpartum depression and was hospitalized for 4 months. During that time, my dad had to take care of all of us, and a nanny looked after me. My sister, who was about 5 years old at the time, ended up getting the least attention, and she never forgot it. She didn't blame my mom, she blamed me. At one point, she even tried to suffocate me with a pillow. My mom stopped her in time, but the family later turned it into a funny story, probably as a coping mechanism. Growing up, she constantly used manipulation to get her way. At first, it was small things, toys, attention, but as she got older, it turned into bigger demands, like expensive trips, and now this wedding. This is also why I've always been closer to my dad than my mom. We actually had a somewhat normal relationship when I was around 12, but everything changed again when my mom got pregnant with our youngest sibling. That pregnancy wasn't planned, and somehow I became the target of my sister's resentment again. Update 2. Now for what actually happened. We finally had a serious conversation. I explained everything, how unfair it was, the financial pressure, and how it affected me. My dad completely lost it when he realized what was going on. He had no idea about the $100,000 plan. I showed him screenshots, especially where my mom kept saying, "Your father and I agreed," which wasn't true at all. We resolved the wedding issue. I'm not required to attend. Then my parents asked me to leave the room so they could talk privately. Later, my dad asked me why I never came to him earlier. Instead of answering directly, I showed him everything I had written. He was furious. He immediately called my sister and demanded she come home, but she refused, saying she was with her fiance's family. When he insisted, she hung up and blocked him. After that, my mom came to talk to me privately. She opened up about her postpartum depression and things I had never known before. We managed to reconnect a bit. I asked her if my sister would agree to therapy, since she clearly believes those early childhood events affected her so deeply. My mom said she would try, but she can't force her. I told her that if my sister refuses therapy, I will cut contact with her completely. My dad reassured me that I would get my $25,000 and I don't have to attend the wedding. He even joked that since she's charging guests $150, she can fund her wedding that way. We also confirmed that the $150 tradition is completely fake. Even the groom's mother was shocked when she heard about it. The only somewhat similar tradition is a money dance at some weddings, but nothing like mandatory payments.
So, my sister showed up about 5 hours later. While the groom's mother was still there, she acted sweet and polite, like nothing was wrong. But the moment the woman left, everything exploded. It was like a switch flipped. My sister immediately started demanding to know why my dad had interrupted their evening and forced her to come home. Dad didn't even try to be polite. He said he didn't care about their plans and told her to sit down. She refused at first, and they began arguing. Eventually, she sat down, but only after Dad used a mix of pressure, financial threats, and even saying he would tell the groom's mother what she's really like, something her fiancé apparently hasn't fully seen yet. I was asked to leave the room again. From outside, I could hear shouting, accusations, and manipulation. My sister started threatening to cut off contact with the family or even prevent my parents from seeing their future grandchildren. She tried pushing my mom back into agreeing to the original $100,000 wedding plan, but this time, both my parents stood firm. At one point, my dad snapped and yelled that my mom was not her emotional punching bag and that she wasn't to blame for what happened with her postpartum depression. He told my sister that if she had issues because of it, she needed therapy. Then I was called back into the room. We started going through everything, beginning with the keto diet book. My sister tried to justify her behavior by calling me fat and lazy, but my dad shut that down immediately and defended me. She broke down crying, and my mom asked Dad to be less harsh, which he tried to do. In the end, we talked through everything. For the first time in a long time, I actually felt like a real part of the family, not just someone they dump problems on. Eventually, my sister stormed out, called a taxi, and left, claiming she was being attacked. We decided to wait until Christmas, when my brothers would be back in town, to have a full family discussion about what to do next. Most likely, it will come down to either therapy or cutting her off completely. Meanwhile, my parents are still negotiating the wedding budget with the groom's family. They made it clear that if such a wedding is going to happen, everyone needs to contribute. The groom's family agreed that $100,000 for a wedding is insane. The latest plan is that my sister will receive $15,000, but in reality it's closer to $5,000, since $10,000 has already been spent on her dress. The remaining $10,000 will be saved for something more meaningful. The groom's family also agreed to contribute $15,000, $10,000 for the wedding and $5,000 for the honeymoon. As for my education, tomorrow my dad and I are going to the bank. We're canceling the loan I was pressured into taking and paying a small penalty. Thankfully, since the loan hadn't started yet, the fee is minimal. My dad covered it himself because he agreed I should never have been pushed into taking that loan in the first place. My parents also agreed to pay for my first year of tuition without touching the $25,000 saved for me. That money will now be transferred into a separate account for my future. My relationship with my mom is still a bit strained, and my sister straight up hates me now. She blamed me for everything and said I ruined her relationship with her fiancé and his family. Because of that, she banned me from her wedding and cut me out of her life completely. Honestly, I don't feel like I lost a sister. It feels more like I finally got rid of a villain. I promised my parents I would never treat my younger sister the way I was treated. I want to be someone she can rely on, someone who protects her, just like my dad and brothers protected me. Some comments I saw pointed out something important. My sister literally tried to kill me as a child. That's not something small, it's serious trauma. And the fact that it was later turned into a funny story is deeply concerning. That's not normal. And honestly, people are right. I need answers about why my mom handled it that way and why my sister wasn't kept in therapy longer. She should also apologize for that. The author's clarification. At first, my parents didn't treat the incident as a joke. It was my sister who later started saying it was just a joke, especially as we got older. After that incident, my parents were very careful. They never left me alone with her. Either they were present or my older brother was nearby. Only when I was around 10 and our relationship seemed normal did it start being talked about jokingly. I forgave her and genuinely believed it wasn't serious. Now I understand that wasn't true. She's resented me her entire life. As for therapy, she did go from ages 7 to 10, but she learned how to say exactly what the therapist wanted to hear, so the sessions ended. My dad didn't object, but my mom wanted a second opinion and found one of the best child psychologists in Alberta. He worked with her for almost 4 years. In the end, he said she had improved and learned to cope with her trauma, but honestly, I think she just got really good at pretending. About her fiancé, he knows everything. I sent him a long voice message and we talked for 2 hours. In the end, he didn't seem very surprised. Looking back, I think he already knew. He also shows some concerning traits himself. Some people asked whether my parents feel like they failed in raising her. I think they do, at least partly. She showed troubling behavior even as a child, pushing, biting, hurting other kids, but I believe the lack of attention from my mom in that critical period really affected her. My dad was busy with my brothers, the nanny focused on me, and an aunt helped with her, but she couldn't replace a mother.
Even though things improved for a while, everything changed again when I was 12. That's when my sister told me directly that she hated me, and always had. Around that time, my mom got pregnant again, and my sister started acting out, taking her anger out on me, the house, even the dog. To better understand her, it's worth mentioning that she actually stole her fiancé from another girl she knew, just because she wanted him, without caring about the consequences. Some people suggested she might have borderline personality disorder. Psychologists usually wait until adulthood to diagnose it, hoping the person will outgrow certain behaviors. But adults with BPD can become extremely manipulative, able to deceive therapists, hide patterns, and convincingly lie about their actions and emotions. At this point, I honestly don't think she would agree to therapy unless it was just to prove she's right. She didn't even give me that Lalaloopsy doll. She took it and burned it. Cutting contact really seems like the best option when dealing with someone like this. Life becomes much calmer without constant drama and accusations. Therapy only works if the person actually wants to change, and people like her often don't. That's why I've decided to go to therapy myself. It's already helping. Growing up in this kind of environment distorts your sense of what's normal, and only later do you realize how unhealthy it really was. So yes, my mom, dad, and I are all now in therapy. Update 3. 3 months later. Family therapy is actually going really well. My brothers were given leave and returned to Canada after being stationed abroad. Things are slowly improving, and my relationship with my mom is stronger than ever. It honestly feels like I have my best friend back. As for my sister, I have no real contact with her. A friend still follows her on social media, and she seems fine. The wedding was moved from December to November. She and her fiancé bought a house, and there are rumors she's pregnant. She has completely cut ties with us. Her fiancé's family has been spreading negative rumors about ours, but we're staying strong. On a brighter note, my older brother is getting married, and instead of losing a toxic sister, I'm gaining an amazing one. She's incredibly kind. She checks in on me, sends food when I'm down, and even asked me to be her bridesmaid. She's an only child, and her mom passed away, so it means a lot to her. I said yes. By next year, I'll officially have a new sister. I also started dating someone. He's in the army too. Apparently, that's my type now. He's very supportive, and things are going great so far. Update 4. After the wedding. My family and I weren't invited to the wedding, but we heard how it went from relatives and friends. The ceremony itself was pretty standard. The groom's mother wore an ivory dress, and some guests even brought kids despite it supposedly being a child-free event. The real drama happened at the reception. The groom's mother invited one of his ex-girlfriends, apparently hoping to stir things up, but it didn't work. The ex tried to create tension, but he shut it down quickly and asked her to leave. So honestly, nothing too dramatic happened. They got married, and now they're heading off on their honeymoon. And yes, my sister is pregnant. At the end of the reception, during a slideshow, the final image was an ultrasound with the caption, "Baby surname June 2023." At this point, the story has already sparked plenty of opinions. I don't think there's much more to add. I'm just glad it ended the way it did, because situations like this don't always turn out so well.
My mom and my unemployed sister are trying to take 80% of my father's inheritance. They've already damaged his business reputation, and now they're accusing me of embezzlement. I'm 32, and this has been one of the hardest weeks of my life. My dad passed away suddenly from a heart attack, and instead of being able to grieve properly, I'm dealing with ugly family drama. I never imagined I'd be facing something like this at my age. My parents divorced when I was 15, and it was messy. My mom cheated on my dad with his best friend, and it completely tore our family apart. My younger sister, Emmy, she's 28 now, sided with our mom. I chose to stay with my dad, and after that, things between me and them were never the same. My dad was self-made. He started with a tiny electronics repair shop in our garage when I was a kid. I still remember helping him sort parts and looking at circuit diagrams on weekends. Over time, he turned that small shop into a chain of stores across the state. His story always inspired me. He worked incredibly hard and built everything from nothing. After the divorce, he buried himself even deeper in work. I think it was his way of coping with the betrayal. I'd wake up at night and see him still working at 2 a.m., going through spreadsheets and planning the next steps. But despite everything, he always made time for me. We had breakfast together every morning, and he never missed a school event. Eventually, he remarried a wonderful woman named Susan. She never tried to replace my mom, but she was kind, supportive, and truly cared about my dad. They traveled, volunteered, and seemed genuinely happy. It meant a lot to me to see him smile again. Meanwhile, my mom's life went downhill. Her relationship with my dad's former best friend didn't last, and she struggled financially ever since. She always claimed my dad cheated her in the divorce, but from what I know, the settlement was fair. He even let her keep the house, which she later lost due to poor financial decisions. Over the years, she bounced between jobs, real estate, retail, catering, always starting with enthusiasm but quitting when things got hard. My sister followed a similar path. She dropped out of college, moved from job to job, talked about big plans but never followed through. She relied heavily on my mom, and together they built this shared resentment toward my dad. Yesterday was my dad's funeral. It was heartbreaking, but also overwhelming in a different way. So many people showed up. The church was full of colleagues, employees, and community members who respected him. I gave the eulogy, talking about his values, honesty, resilience, and hard work. It wasn't easy to speak through the tears, but I wanted to honor him properly. What shocked me was that my mom and sister showed up. They hadn't spoken to him in years. They sat in the back, whispering to each other. At first, I was glad they came, but then I overheard something that made my stomach turn. My mom said, "Now's our chance to finally get what we deserve." My sister agreed and said they should go after at least 80% of the inheritance. Their plan was to challenge the will, claiming my dad wasn't mentally sound and arguing that my mom had supported him while he built the business. I couldn't believe it. At his funeral, of all places, they were already planning how to take his money? It felt like a betrayal, not just of me, but of everything he stood for. I didn't confront them there. It wasn't the place. But I knew I had to stay alert. In the days after, I noticed them acting unusually nice towards Susan. It was fake, completely out of character. They were trying to get on her good side. I even caught my sister snooping in my dad's office, pretending to look for photos, but clearly searching for documents. Then came the reading of the will. We sat with my dad's lawyer. Susan was quiet, still devastated. My mom and sister looked tense, clearly expecting something. As it turned out, my dad left the business to me. I had worked with him for years, and I knew how everything operated. Susan inherited the house and a large portion of the savings. He also made several charitable donations. My mom and sister, they weren't even included, just symbolic amounts of $10,000 each. The moment the lawyer finished, my mom exploded. She started shouting about how unfair it was, claiming she had supported him for years. Of course, she conveniently ignored the affair that ended their marriage. My sister jumped in, saying it wasn't fair that I inherited so much, claiming I had already benefited by living with him. She accused him of favoritism and said he was punishing her for siding with my mom. It was obvious they had rehearsed all of this. That's when I lost it. I told them I had overheard their conversation at the funeral. I called them out for planning to challenge the will and trying to take advantage of the situation. I told them they should be ashamed. My mom tried to backtrack, playing the victim, talking about how hard life had been for her. My sister accused me of always taking my dad's side, but I stood my ground. I reminded them how they treated him, cutting him off, ignoring him, rejecting every attempt he made to reconnect. He didn't owe them anything. The fact that he left them anything at all showed his generosity. The meeting ended with them storming out and threatening legal action. Susan broke down. The stress is destroying her. The lawyer reassured us that the will is solid and difficult to challenge, but warned that if they do file a lawsuit, it could drag on for a long time. Since then, my phone hasn't stopped. Some relatives support me. Others say I should keep the peace and give them something. But I refuse. My dad built everything with his own hands. It was his decision, and I will respect it. I've started going through his business records, preparing in case this turns into a legal battle. From everything I've seen, my mom's claims are exaggerated. The business really took off after the divorce. I've also spoken to longtime employees. They all tell the same story, how hard he worked, how much he helped people. One employee, Jim, told me my dad gave him a second chance when no one else would. He started as a janitor and worked his way up to store manager. That's the kind of man my dad was, and that's why I won't let anyone destroy what he built. Still, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was conflicted. Part of me wonders if I should compromise just to avoid a long legal battle, but it would go against everything my dad believed in. Right now, I'm focusing on supporting Susan and keeping the business stable. Losing my dad is already overwhelming. Fighting off my own family on top of that is exhausting. I barely sleep. I keep replaying everything in my head. What worries me most is Susan. She's devastated, and this situation is only making it worse. And the company, my dad was its heart. Stepping into his role feels overwhelming enough without the threat of a lawsuit hanging over everything.
I've even thought about offering Mom and Emmy more than what Dad left them, just to make them back off. But I understand the risk. If I give in once, it might only encourage them to demand even more. And, most importantly, it would go against Dad's wishes. Last night, I came across an old family photo album in Dad's office. One picture stopped me completely. It was from the opening day of his first store. Dad cutting the ribbon, Mom smiling beside him, and Emmy and I clapping as little kids. We looked happy, proud, like a real family. And I couldn't help but think, how did we get here? How did that moment turn into this mess? So now I'm stuck with this question. Was I wrong for confronting Mom and Emmy so harshly? Am I right to stand my ground and honor Dad's will? Should I fight this all the way through, or try to compromise just to keep some kind of peace in the family? Honestly, I don't know. If Mom and Emmy truly had zero chance in court, part of me considered just offering them a bit more money to make them go away. Not a share in the business, never that. But if Dad left them $10,000 each, maybe I'd offered $20,000, $30,000, just to avoid months or years of stress and move on with my life. Because in the end, peace of mind is often worth more than money. But if there was even a small chance they could win, then maybe it would take a bigger offer to settle. Still, deep down, I and many others feel like they don't deserve anything at all. If this went to court and they lost, they wouldn't just walk away empty-handed, they'd also have to cover legal costs. That would be its own kind of justice. Karma, in a way. Even so, my instincts keep telling me to at least consider offering something small just to avoid a long and exhausting war. Update number 1. It's been about a month since my last post. Unfortunately, things have only gotten worse, far worse than I ever expected. At this point, it honestly feels like I'm living inside some kind of bad drama, except it's real and there's no warning before everything falls apart. First of all, thank you to everyone who commented on my previous post. Your support genuinely helped me stay grounded. Those of you who told me to stand firm, I needed to hear that. And to those who suggested compromise, I truly considered it. I even tried. But I'll get to that. So, where do I start? The lawsuit. Yes, Mom and Emmy actually went through with it. About a week after the will was read, I was officially served court papers. They hired a lawyer who's known for being extremely aggressive in inheritance disputes. Their claim? The dad wasn't of sound mind when he wrote the will, and that Mom supposedly played a major role in building the business, enough to justify her taking most of it. They're demanding 80% of the estate, exactly what I overheard at the funeral. It's insane, but even if it's ridiculous, the damage is very real. Legal fees are piling up fast. I had to hire my own lawyer. Thankfully, Tom, Dad's longtime friend and legal advisor, agreed to represent us. He knows both our family and the company inside out, which helps a lot. Even with his discounted rate, this is expensive. Tom is confident the will is solid and very difficult to challenge, but he warned me, cases like this can drag on for months, even years. And honestly, the lawsuit isn't even the worst part. Mom and Emmy have started a full-on smear campaign against me and Susan. They're spreading rumors, claiming Susan manipulated Dad into changing the will, that I've been stealing money from the company for years, and that we plan to sell everything and fire the staff. All lies. But rumors spread fast. I've spent hours on the phone reassuring employees that their jobs are safe. Even longtime customers have started asking questions. Some are worried enough to consider leaving. Last week, I overheard two new employees whispering about whether they should start looking for new jobs. That's when I had to call an emergency staff meeting just to shut everything down. It hurts, a lot. I never thought I'd have to defend myself or my father's legacy like this. The theft accusations hit especially hard. Dad was extremely strict when it came to finances, and he taught me everything I know. The idea that I would steal from the business he built from nothing, it honestly makes my blood boil. I've been going through financial records with our accountant, preparing everything in case this ends up in court. Susan is taking all of this the hardest. She's not used to this kind of manipulation and conflict. At one point, she even suggested we just give Mom and Emmy what they want, just to make it stop. I had to remind her that's exactly what they're counting on. A few nights ago, I found her sitting in Dad's office, crying, holding one of his old sweaters, the one he used to wear when working late. She looked at me and asked, would he really want all this fighting? That broke me. I tried reaching out to Mom and Emmy, calls, messages, anything. Nothing worked. Now everything goes through their lawyer. It's like they've completely erased the idea that we're family. I even ran into Emmy at a store last week. I thought maybe without Mom around, I could talk to her. But the moment she saw me, her expression turned cold. She accused me of turning everyone against her and stealing Dad's money. I tried to remind her of how things really were after the divorce, but she just smirked and said, "You were always Dad's favorite."
Then she walked away, like I was a stranger. Meanwhile, the rest of the family is splitting apart. Some relatives fully support me and are disgusted by Mom and Emmy's behavior. Others say I'm being too harsh and should just give them money to keep the peace. My cousin Jack even yelled at me during a family dinner, saying this whole situation is my fault. That dinner was supposed to be about remembering Dad. Instead, it turned into a fight. My Aunt Sarah even made passive-aggressive comments about people forgetting where they came from once they get money. I left early just to avoid things escalating further. This is my reality now, and honestly, it feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. Update number 2. That family dinner ended in complete chaos. My Uncle Pete, Dad's brother, snapped back at Jack, saying some people never learn the value of hard work. Jack started shouting, and everything spiraled from there. As for me, I've thrown myself completely into the business. Dad built it from nothing, and I'm not gonna let it fall apart. Thankfully, most of the employees have been incredibly supportive. Many of them have known me since I was a kid, and they keep sharing stories about Dad that remind me why I'm doing all of this. One moment hit especially hard. Jim, the same employee Dad gave a second chance to years ago, came into my office with a stack of old photos. Company events, holidays, store openings. In every single one, there was Dad, working, smiling, present. Jim looked at me and said, "This is who your father was. This is what you're fighting for." I can't even describe how much that meant. But the pressure is real. I barely sleep, I've lost weight. People keep telling me I look exhausted. My days are nothing but lawyers, documents, and constant damage control. Sometimes I look in the mirror and don't even recognize myself. And yeah, sometimes I wonder if it's even worth it. The worst part is the doubt. Should I just pay them and end this? Would that be easier? But then I remember Dad trusting me with everything he built, and I know I can't betray that. Tom keeps reminding me this is a marathon, not a sprint. So now I'm documenting everything, every rumor, every ignored message, every attempt I've made to resolve things peacefully. We're also collecting statements from longtime employees, proof of how the business really grew, especially after the divorce, to shut down Mom's claims once and for all.
At the same time, I've realized I need to fight not just in court, but also in the court of public opinion. I'm planning a company-wide meeting to directly address the rumors and reassure everyone that their jobs are safe. I also intend to personally call some of our biggest clients to maintain their trust. Susan and I are even working on starting a scholarship fund in Dad's name for local kids who want to study business or electronics. We figured it's not only a way to honor his memory, but also to show the community that, like him, we believe in giving back. The response so far has been incredible. Even my old high school principal suggested we award the first scholarship at this year's graduation ceremony. It's a small light in a very dark time. As for Mom and Emmy, I've stopped trying to reason with them. If they want to communicate, it'll be through lawyers. It hurts to imagine what Dad would think, seeing his family torn apart like this. I wish I could tell you they came to their senses, that we patched things up and became one big happy family again. But that's not reality. The truth is messy, painful, and full of disappointment. For those who told me in my first post to seek compromise, I want you to know I really did try. I offered them a trust fund larger than the $10,000 Dad had originally left, but nowhere near the insane 80% they demanded. They flat out rejected it. Their counteroffer, if you can even call it that, was that they'd drop the lawsuit if I gave them 70% of the inheritance and walked away from the company entirely. When Tom told me that, I almost laughed. It's so detached from reality, it made me wonder if we even live in the same world anymore. So, here I am, preparing for a long, ugly legal war with my own mother and sister. Definitely not what I expected when we buried Dad just months ago. But this is the path, and I'm walking it. What weighs on me the most is knowing that no matter how this ends, our family will never be the same. Even if by some miracle Mom and Emmy dropped everything tomorrow, too much has been said. Too many lines have been crossed. Trust is gone. Love, I don't even know if it was ever there from their side. But I'm not fighting alone. Susan has been my rock through all of this. She misses Dad. She hates the rumors. She feels the weight of the lawsuit, but she's still here, reminding me what we're fighting for whenever I start to doubt. And beyond her, I've got Dad's old friends, employees who feel more like family than blood ever did, and loyal clients reaching out to show support. Maybe that's what Dad was trying to teach me all along, that family isn't just blood. Family is the people who stand beside you, share your values, and help you be the best version of yourself. I'll write another update when I have news. In the meantime, if anyone has advice on surviving baseless lawsuits or pushing back against smear campaigns, I'm all ears. And thank you again, truly, for all the support. It means more than you know. Hopefully, the next update will bring better news. Final update. What a year it's been. I kept putting off writing this last update, partly because life stayed hectic, but mostly because I wanted to be absolutely sure everything was over before sharing it with you. Now it is, and I promised to keep you in the loop, so here we go. Let's start with the lawsuit. After months of legal battles and mountains of paperwork, we finally had our day in court. It was exhausting beyond words. Mom and Emmy's lawyer pulled out every trick he had, painting Mom as the long-suffering wife who sacrificed everything for Dad's business, only to be cruelly cast aside. He even brought in so-called experts to testify about the emotional labor of a spouse being the foundation of a company's success. Theatrics were off the charts. He had Mom take the stand, telling stories about lonely nights while Dad was at the office, conveniently leaving out her affair with his best friend. But Tom, our lawyer, was ready. He presented proof of Dad's endless hours of work, employee testimonies about how the company really grew after the divorce, and financial records showing Mom had already received a fair settlement back then. He also didn't let her gloss over the affair. One of the most powerful moments came from Jim, the same employee Dad gave a second chance to. He told the court how Dad believed in him when no one else would, and how he watched firsthand as Dad's determination built the business. By the time he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room, except for Mom and Emmy, who sat stone-faced, like they'd swallowed something bitter. But the knockout blow came from something completely unexpected. Remember how Emmy had snooped around Dad's office after the funeral? Turns out she did find something, Dad's old journal from the divorce years. They thought it would strengthen their case, maybe show Dad's state of mind. Instead, it destroyed them. When Tom got it during discovery, it told a very different story. Pages about sleepless nights, juggling payroll, taking out a second mortgage on the house to keep the company alive. Notes about Mom's indifference to the business, her reckless spending, and yes, her affair.
I'll never forget one entry Tom read aloud. Dad wrote about a night when everything was on the brink of collapse. He came home desperate to talk money, only to find Mom out partying, having spent hundreds on a new outfit. He described how alone he felt, how close he was to giving up. But then he wrote about quietly checking on me while I slept, and that moment gave him the strength to keep going. For my son, I will build a legacy he can be proud of. Hearing those words in court nearly broke me, but they also reminded me why I was fighting. After that, things moved quickly. The judge ruled in our favor, threw out their case, and ordered Mom and Emmy to cover our legal fees. On paper, it was a total victory, but it didn't feel like joy, just relief and a heavy sadness that it ever came to this. And that wasn't the end. Remember the smear campaign they'd been running? It backfired. Some of the nastier rumors, like embezzlement and claims that we planned to sell the company, were legally deemed defamatory. We didn't sue, but the threat alone forced them to issue a public retraction. Watching them admit they'd spread lies was surreal. They looked small, defeated, nothing like the bold, angry women who started all this. Part of me pitied them, but mostly I was angry for everything they'd put us through. The fallout was massive. Relatives who once doubted me, or even sided with them, turned away once the truth came out. The business, though shaken at first by the negativity, ultimately grew stronger. Employees and clients saw our transparency, our willingness to stand and fight, and it built trust instead of eroding it. We held a company-wide meeting afterward where I laid everything out honestly and shared our plans moving forward. I was nervous people had lost faith, but when I looked around, all I saw was supportive faces. And the scholarship fund we set up in Dad's name, it's already changed lives. We've helped a dozen local kids chase their college dreams. At the first ceremony, handing out those scholarships and telling Dad's story about his belief in hard work and giving back felt like the perfect way to honor him. On a personal level, this whole ordeal has changed me. I've learned how quickly people can turn against you, but I've also learned who truly stands by your side. I found family in Susan, in our loyal employees, in the friends who never wavered, even in all of you who listened, advised, and sent words of encouragement when I needed them most. As for Mom and Emmy, I haven't spoken to them since the verdict. Maybe I never will. That's a wound time alone won't fix. So, here it is, the final chapter. Thank you for following me through this storm. Your support meant more than I can ever say. It's time to close this book and focus on building the future Dad dreamed about. This will be my last update.
I'm refusing to go on a family vacation because my sister expects me to look after her kids again. I even had to move out of my parents' house earlier because I was constantly being pulled into babysitting my 3 nieces and nephews. Despite that, last year I still ended up acting like a helper, or even the main nanny during our family trip. For example, last summer we went to the beach. My parents paid for my hotel, but I had to share a room with 3 loud boys because my sister and her husband wanted their own space. I was promised I'd have time for myself, but instead I spent almost all my free time taking care of the kids. When I complained, everyone reminded me that I wasn't paying for the trip. In the end, we only did one thing I actually wanted, visiting an art gallery. I enjoy that kind of thing on vacation, but the kids were bored. This year, my parents planned another similar trip in June and expected everything to be the same. I refused. I told them I would drive separately and pay for my own hotel so I could have my own space. They were surprised and brought up the cost, but I explained that I have a stable job and can afford it. That led to arguments, but I explained my reasons clearly. I want to enjoy a vacation like an adult, not spend it like a babysitter. My parents told my sister, and she immediately called me, yelling that I would ruin everything if I didn't help her with the kids. I finally snapped and reminded her how last year I was dragged into her chaos, barely able to do anything for myself, and even made to feel guilty for wanting something simple like visiting an art gallery. I told her I deserve a proper vacation too. Now she refuses to talk to me, and my parents are still trying to convince me to go along just to avoid conflict. I'm standing my ground, even though the pressure is growing. I understand it won't be easy for them without help, but I don't think I'm wrong for setting boundaries. Let me know what you think. Am I right, or is my sister justified since she has 3 kids to take care of? Update 1. About an hour after I posted, my sister somehow found it. She wasn't just angry at me, she was upset that people in the comments didn't support her. She had a meltdown talking about how hard it is to raise triplets and insisting that I, as someone young and independent, should help her. I didn't change my position, and now I'm expecting a call from my parents since she already reached out to them. Update 2. After work, I can add more details. Things have mostly settled now. My parents saw my post and were shocked by how many people responded. Yes, they were upset that I posted it, but I told them if they had listened to me earlier, it wouldn't have been necessary. I was tired of always being the one expected to sacrifice for family peace. Eventually, my parents confronted my sister. The trip was canceled anyway since nothing had been booked yet, but now they're arguing with her. She blames me, and the kids are disappointed because they won't go to the beach. She even called me during lunch and implied that I don't have my own life, so I should help her. I recorded that conversation and showed it to my parents, which made them even more upset with her. A few days later, they told me they would never force me to babysit again and admitted that last year's situation was unfair. Now they're angry at my sister for saying I should help just because I have no life. Meanwhile, her husband has stepped back from the chaos and spends most of his time at work. Update 3. My parents have apologized, but my sister hasn't yet. At least as of a week ago, she refused. This whole situation basically exposed deeper issues in our family. For context, my parents and sister got used to me helping with her triplets. I lived with my parents until I was 22 to save money during college. I had a scholarship, but staying at home made things easier, and I'm grateful for that. But after graduating, everyone assumed I had unlimited free time. That's when they convinced me to go on that family trip. During that trip, I was responsible for 3 6-year-old boys and even had to share a room with them. They didn't listen to me at all. I even had to call their mom multiple times just to get them to behave. Yet, whenever I wanted to do something for myself, I was treated like the problem. If my plans didn't match the rest of the family, they were ignored. It felt completely unfair. I was part of the family, but my opinion didn't matter. After that trip, I spoke honestly with my parents, and they admitted they were wrong. By the end of the summer, I moved out without telling anyone in advance. I had already secured a good job after an internship, and moving closer to work reduced my commute significantly. My sister was especially unhappy because she lost her regular free babysitter, but she still tried to pressure me into helping. Sometimes I gave in when she offered things like pizza, and it became expected. When my parents suggested another trip to the same place, I immediately recognized it would be the same situation again. If I accepted their offer to pay, I'd be stuck babysitting. So I told them calmly I would go independently and pay for myself. That's when everything escalated. My parents started pleading, and my sister tried to pressure me emotionally, but I refused. After I posted about it, my family initially turned against me. My parents even called me while reading my post. I asked them if anything I wrote was untrue. They tried to say it was exaggerated, but I pointed out specific details that proved otherwise. I told them to look at the comments, even though there were too many to read fully. The number kept growing quickly, which shocked them and made them reconsider their actions. My sister also tried calling me repeatedly during work. I finally answered at lunch. She complained that my post turned her parents against me. After their argument, my parents canceled the trip. At first, they tried to blame me for it, but later they admitted their mistake. They acknowledged it wasn't fair to treat me like free childcare, especially since I no longer lived with them. They also tried to justify things by reminding me I lived with them for free during college, but I pointed out that wasn't a valid argument. When my sister finally spoke to me, she revealed her mindset clearly, saying I had no life and should spend my weekends helping her because she was too tired to manage everything. She's a stay-at-home mom, her husband earns well, and they live comfortably, but her kids are not my responsibility. She got angry and hung up. I had recorded the call and later showed it to my parents, which made them even more upset with her. A few days later, her husband stepped in and made her apologize.
It was clear he hadn't realized the full situation before. He even believed she had been paying me for babysitting after I moved out. In reality, she barely covered anything, sometimes just gave money for pizza. It turned out she hadn't paid me properly for months. When this came up, her husband was furious, and she had to pay me everything she owed from her savings. After that, he apologized to me for not stepping in earlier and said they would hire a proper babysitter from now on. A few days later, we had a family meeting at my parents' house. Everyone apologized to me again. After that, my parents confirmed that the family vacation was still happening. And yes, I'm still going on my own terms, driving separately and paying for my own hotel room. I made it clear that if my sister even tries to push childcare onto me again, I'll switch hotels. I told her directly, and she promised it wouldn't happen. So, if there's no update a month after the trip, it means everything went fine. Update 4. My sister called me demanding that I delete my posts. She had realized how widely the story had spread and couldn't handle the backlash anymore. She asked if people were still commenting, and I told her honestly, yes, around 10 new comments a day, and most of them are criticizing her. She broke down crying and begged me to take everything down. I refused. I told her those posts are the only reason she can't treat me like garbage anymore. She acted like my entire life should revolve around hers. She didn't even properly pay me for babysitting, kept money for herself, and turned me into a full-time nanny during last year's vacation. It's no surprise people reacted negatively. When I mentioned I had even made a video about the situation, she completely lost it and hung up. Later, my parents called, asking me to delete the posts too. I refused again and explained that none of this would have happened if they had supported me earlier. I told them clearly, I'm not her servant, nanny, or handyman. I'm her brother, and I'm an adult. Eventually, they backed off, but still asked me to remove everything. I told them I wouldn't unless they started standing up for me more often. My sister created this situation with her entitlement, and now she has to deal with it. I also made it clear I have my own life, my career, and I want to move forward. If they keep enabling her, it will only make things worse. The only way to stop this is to end the entire situation. My posts are anonymous, and I have every right to speak about what happened. My mom ended up crying, my dad stayed quiet, and I told them their emotions wouldn't change my decision. They know what needs to be done. Stop supporting her behavior. Soon after, my sister called again, furious because our parents told her they wouldn't step in anymore and that she had to handle things herself. They also told her to treat me better. I responded sarcastically, and when I hung up, she was crying again. Later, her husband called me to hear my side. He wasn't happy that I kept posting, but after I explained everything, he said he would talk to her again. Hopefully, that would calm things down. The vacation was still planned for the end of June. I had already booked my room on a completely different floor, far from my family. I made it clear, unless it was a planned family activity, I would spend my time however I wanted, visiting galleries, trying local food, and actually enjoying myself. The trip itself had ups and downs. The good part, my parents no longer tried to push me into babysitting. My sister did try, though. She even attempted to find out which room I was staying in, but failed. Before arriving, I had already informed the hotel staff not to give out any information about me. They confirmed it. At the day of departure, I left earlier than everyone else. I knew they wouldn't be ready on time, so I left at 9 a.m., even though check-in was later. My parents were annoyed because they had planned a group breakfast, but I told them I hadn't been informed. At the hotel, I double-checked with the staff about my privacy. Later, I found out my family had indeed tried to get my room number, but the staff refused. My sister tried to pressure them, but her husband stopped her. When we met later, everything seemed normal.
At one point during an outing, my sister asked me to watch the kids. I immediately refused. I knew her trick. Just a minute would turn into an hour. Her husband backed me up and told her to stop. She started crying, saying she needed a break, but he reminded her he was tired too. My mom gave me a look, so I went up to her and said clearly if she expected me to babysit, I would leave the vacation immediately. That ended the discussion. After that, neither my mom nor my sister tried again. At the hotel, I avoided sharing elevators and kept distance. My room was far away, and I made sure no one followed me. The next day, I spent most of my time alone, only joining them for specific plans, like visiting the aquarium. Everything stayed calm. Later, my sister confronted me, saying I had ruined her vacation because now she still had to deal with her kids. I told her directly, I'm not her solution anymore, and she needs to handle her own life. She followed me, yelling, but I ignored her. At dinner, I told everyone she had been trying to track me down. She got scolded like a child. I made it clear those days were over. By the last day, everything was peaceful. No pressure, no manipulation. I still spend some time with my nephews. I'm not heartless. I even bought them small souvenirs. Overall, I consider the trip a success. My family finally understood that I'm not someone they can use anymore. Update 6. My mom and my sister saw my latest post and completely lost it again. My sister called, crying, saying I made her look like a bad mother. I told her if the behavior fits, then that's the reality. She couldn't point out anything false in my story. Then my mom came to my house demanding I delete everything. I refused again. She left in tears. Later, I spoke with my parents and I told them clearly their behavior created this situation. I'm not going back to how things were. They told my sister to leave me alone. She threw another tantrum, but her husband stepped in. My parents now insist she needs therapy. Update 7. I had a long conversation with my parents, and we agreed to keep some distance for now. I also spoke with my brother-in-law, and we settled things. He admitted the situation went too far and said my sister needs professional help. They're now looking for a therapist. He also apologized for not stepping in earlier and said they've already hired a proper babysitter. We both agreed it was a difficult situation that needed to end. And one last thing, thanks to all this, I actually started dating. A girl I liked recognized my story and had been waiting for me to make a move. Today is our first date. This is the final update.
I nearly lost $900,000 during my divorce, but instead, I destroyed my cheating wife in court with shocking evidence. I work as an elementary school teacher, so my daily routine is very predictable. I have fixed hours at school, and every Tuesday we usually had staff meetings that ended around 6 p.m. That meant I normally got home by 7. My wife, Terry, whom I had been married to for over 30 years, would go to the gym every Tuesday evening. She always came back exhausted, so I usually prepared dinner while she showered and handled the house chores. But one day, my principal surprised us by canceling the meeting. It was only 3:30 p.m., and I thought it would be a great idea to head home early, cook dinner, and maybe catch up on some household tasks. Lately, I'd noticed Terry becoming more distant, and I hoped a candlelit dinner might help rekindle some spark between us. Our marriage had been strained by financial troubles, and I could feel her pulling away more and more. She wanted to control everything, and if things didn't go her way, she would become stubborn and irritable. I always thought of myself as patient, but it was starting to wear me down. When I got home, I noticed her car in the garage. That was strange because she usually took the bus to the gym. I slipped in quietly through the back door. The first thing I saw was her purse sitting on the kitchen counter. Terry was always meticulous about where she placed her things, so this was odd. Then I noticed her workout clothes and a large towel on the floor. Just as confusion set in, I heard noises coming upstairs. My first thought was that she might not be feeling well, so I cautiously started up the stairs.
That's when I stumbled over a pair of men's shoes. Scattered on the steps were pants, a shirt, socks, and worst of all, Terry's lingerie, the kind she only wore for anniversaries or special nights. My blood ran cold. I froze on the stairs, heart pounding, stomach turning. For a moment, I might faint. I sat down, trembling. Then anger began to boil inside me, an emotion I rarely allowed to take control. Years of teaching had given me patience, but this was beyond anything I could manage. I moved quietly toward the bedroom. To reach it, you had to pass through the walk-in closet. The door was cracked open just enough for me to see inside. And there it was, my wife, my partner of 3 decades, the mother of our children, betraying me in our own bed. I pulled out my phone and hit record. I knew I would need proof, not just for myself, but for the storm that was about to follow. Watching it unfold before my eyes was like living through a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Terry, the woman who claimed to love me, who volunteered at charities, who acted like the perfect wife, was now just another liar. I couldn't watch anymore. I stopped recording, slipped out of the house, and just walked aimlessly. Eventually, I ended up in a park miles away. I sat on a bench, splashed some water on my face, and played the video back. The sound was low so nearby kids wouldn't hear, but on that screen was the collapse of my marriage, my family, my entire life. And there in the park, I broke down and cried. By the time I got back home, it was around 7 p.m., my usual return time on meeting days. Terry greeted me at the back door with fake concern. "Honey, are you okay? You look so pale. What happened? Do you want me to get you something to drink?" Her eyes were full of feigned worry, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. My voice shook as I muttered, "Not really. I think it's just my stomach. I'm gonna take a shower and sleep it off." "All right, but take a bucket in case you throw up. I don't want to ruin the clean sheets," she said casually. That almost broke me. Those clean sheets had already been ruined, stained by betrayal. I replied more firmly, "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight." And that's exactly what I did. For the next few days, I pretended to be unwell. She went on with life as if nothing had happened, while I carried the weight of the recording in my pocket, the evidence that my marriage was nothing but ashes. When Monday came, I finally decided what to do next. I needed answers. Was this just a one-time betrayal, or had it been going on for a while? The next morning, I told the school principal that I had to undergo an unexpected medical procedure and wouldn't be able to teach for a few days. A substitute was arranged, which gave me the freedom I needed. On Tuesday, I left home as usual, but parked several streets away, then walked back quietly, cutting through neighbors' yards. I knew all the back routes and moved carefully so no one would notice me. I slipped into our detached garage and changed into casual clothes and soft shoes to keep silent. Then came the waiting. I remembered that the last time I'd come home early, there hadn't been any strange cars parked outside. That meant her lover probably came on foot. I crouched behind the hedge and bushes near our front entrance, hidden but with a clear view of the door. Terry carried on her morning as if everything was normal, washing dishes, starting the dishwasher, vacuuming, dusting. Around 11:30, she went upstairs. I heard the shower running, followed by the toilet flushing. After about 45 minutes, she came back down and left the front door slightly open, an unspoken invitation for her guest. It didn't take long. Around 1:30, he showed up. I didn't know who he was at first, but I managed to capture about 10 seconds of video on my phone. It showed his side profile and almost a clear shot of his face. He didn't hesitate. He just walked straight into my house. The first words I heard froze me in place. "I hope you're wearing that workout outfit again." "Of course," Terry replied with a giggle. "You always loved when I put it on. Sometimes I think that's what hooked you in the first place." That was all I needed. Their comfort with each other screamed of a long-term affair. They headed upstairs without a care in the world. I returned to the garage, my heart pounding out of my chest. My head was spinning with questions. Who was this man? How long had this been going on?
And why hadn't she ever talked to me about anything? What terrified me more was the thought of my health. They hadn't used protection, at least not that I could see. The idea that she might have put me at risk made my stomach churn. I thought back to her years at the gym, the social circle of married women she had joined, and the charity events. Maybe the gym held the answers.
Update 1. Being a teacher came with one big advantage. I had access to printers and other resources. I decided to start by printing still frames from the video I had taken. Identifying him was now my top priority. On Thursday, when Terry was supposed to go to the gym again, I suggested going with her. I claimed I was thinking about getting a membership myself, especially since school was on break. She immediately grew uncomfortable and tried to talk me out of it. "It's really just a group of wives who chat more than work out," she insisted. But I didn't budge. So that Thursday, I walked into the gym with her. The moment I stepped inside, it felt like a scene from an old Western. Everyone turned to stare at me, whispering among themselves. Terry was visibly on edge, sneaking nervous glances toward the staff area. I tried to distract myself by walking around the facility. It was the usual setup, rows of machines, mirrors on the walls. Near the exit, I noticed a staff board with photos and contact info. At the top was the owner and director, Ms. Elizabeth West, followed by 2 women and 1 man. My blood went cold. The man was him, the lover. Under his photo, Philip Barnes, head of training programs, personal coach. As I memorized his number, I looked back toward the machines. Terry was gone. Panic struck me until I spotted her a few minutes later in a hushed but desperate conversation with none other than Philip. She stood partly hidden behind weight equipment, gesturing for him to leave. Then she quickly returned to her machine as if nothing had happened. She didn't realize I'd seen it all. I sat there, burning with rage, trying to keep my composure. When she came back over, she noticed my pale face and asked softly, "Are you okay? Is your blood sugar still low?" "I'm fine now. Are you ready to leave?" Before she could answer, the director's voice echoed through the loudspeaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, the last training session of the day is canceled. Mr. Barnes suddenly felt unwell and had to go home." A wave of disappointment swept through the women in the gym. But I wasn't disappointed. For me, it only confirmed everything. Update 2. It seemed that workouts with Mr. Bont were a cornerstone for many women at that gym. That alone made me think this needed deeper investigation. When I glanced at Terry, she didn't show much reaction to the announcement of his sudden illness, but I could swear I saw her shoulders relax, as if a huge weight had been lifted. "Let's go," she said quickly, snatching her towel and gym bag from the storage area where everyone left their things during class. We were just stepping out when a woman approached us, someone I didn't immediately recognize. "Such a shame we couldn't finish today's session properly," she commented to Terry. Terry gave a brief "agreed" and headed toward the car, clearly signaling that she had no interest in chatting further. "See you later," she tossed over her shoulder, before sliding into the car faster than I'd ever seen her move. The ride home was silent. Terry leaned her head back, closed her eyes, and deliberately slowed her breathing as though calming herself. She looked serene, almost too serene, and I couldn't help but think maybe I could use this relaxed moment to probe deeper. "That was a pretty interesting workout, dear. The place is really well equipped. No wonder you've stayed so toned all these years." "Thanks, honey," she replied softly. "You're absolutely right. The program's great, and I enjoy being there. The women are friendly, too. Too bad Mr. Bont wasn't around today." She caught herself too quickly, correcting, Philip Bont. He usually finishes every session with those tough exercises that really push us to the limit. It's always disappointing when he's not around." Inside, my stomach twisted. I knew all too well how far he had been pushing her body, but outwardly I only muttered, maybe he'll be better by next Thursday." The thought of their next intimate encounter made me sick, but I shoved it down. The following week,
I had playground duty at school during pickup time. For those unfamiliar, it's chaos. Kids rushing out, chatting with friends, scanning for parents, while we teachers try to keep order until each child is collected. Near the end of pickup, a car pulled up, and I instantly recognized the driver. It was the same woman who had tried speaking to Terry in the gym. "Hello," she said nervously. "Sorry, I'm new to all this and lost track of the time. My son Timothy's here, right?" That wasn't unusual. New parents often struggled with pickup procedures. I reassured her I'd get Timothy, while colleagues covered the remaining kids. I found him near his classroom, chatting with another student. "Hey Tim, your mom's here. Let's head to the pickup area." He looked puzzled. He was in the last year of elementary school, old enough to not lose track of time. "That's weird," he muttered. "Mom's usually busy with her fitness instructor on Friday afternoons. Back at my old school, she often didn't come until 5:30. The word fitness instructor hit me like a hammer. My heart pounded as I casually asked, "Oh, that's great she takes care of her health. Do you happen to know his name?" "Yeah, it's Bont or something like that. He works at the local gym but also does private lessons at home. That's who I want to be when I grow up. Mom always seems so happy and relaxed after training with him. We usually order takeout on Fridays because she doesn't have time to cook." I nearly lost my composure. This man wasn't just entangled with my wife, he was messing around with multiple women in town. Back at the car, his mother thanked me warmly for helping. "Not a problem," I said smoothly. "Part of the job. By the way, I don't think we've officially met. I'm Gerard D. Kids just call me Mr. D." "Nice to meet you," she replied, shaking my hand. "I'm Mary Jones. I remember seeing you at the gym last Thursday. You were with your wife, Terry. Sorry she seemed in such a hurry to leave. It looked like Mr. Bont's absence threw everything off." The moment she said his name, her entire demeanor shifted. She paled, her hands trembled, and she stammered, Well, Mr. D, see you later," before practically fleeing the parking lot. That sealed it. Bont wasn't just a trainer. He was a serial predator in our community.
Update 3. It was time to think about my future, and in that vision there was no Terry. Rage gave me clarity. I began reviewing all the small but crucial details of our shared life, the sort of things couples often overlook. Who pays which bills? Which insurance company do we use? When are utilities due? From which account do we make automatic payments? I discovered the mortgage had only a small balance left. My retirement account had grown to an impressive $900,000 thanks to mandatory contributions from our teachers' union. Our savings account, intended for an overseas vacation, held about $30,000. That trip was no longer on the table. My priority became draining it before Terry realized I knew about her betrayal. Quietly, I engineered a series of appliance breakdowns while she wasn't home. I'd unplug a cord, then claim a repairman had come to fix it, paying in cash. In reality, I pocketed the money and repaired it myself. Over time, I gathered nearly $20,000 this way. I also purchased tools and other necessities to prepare for what was coming. Update 4. I always paid cash for everything, showing the receipts to Terry, then secretly returning the items the next day. Dishonest? Absolutely. But honesty and trust had already been gutted from our marriage. Because of her actions, I was becoming a man I never thought I could be, a liar. Her Thursday daytime workouts with Bonte continued, and I no longer bothered even trying to initiate anything intimate with her. We coexisted like roommates. That was it. Quietly, I began boxing up my personal belongings, keeping them stored in the garage where Terry rarely went. Since her car usually sat outside, the garage was basically my territory, and she didn't notice my gradual disappearance. On the rare occasion she did ask about missing items, I told her they'd broken or that I didn't need them anymore. She accepted those answers, mostly because many of my things didn't fit her preferred aesthetic anyway. When most of my possessions were gone and the house looked practically unchanged, I realized how much I'd already surrendered to Terry's control over the years. I withdrew what I could from my retirement account and bought a small house on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms, a tiny yard, and a garage, but it was mine. close to the school where I worked, and best of all, the mortgage was small enough that half my salary easily covered the payments. No mansion, no luxury, but solid. Amazing what you can find if you're willing to skip the glossy neighborhoods. I moved my belongings in piece by piece. Furniture wasn't a problem. Secondhand shops and donation centers were full of cheap finds. Honestly, the place reflected my own state, used but still standing. It was time for everyone to get what they deserved. One afternoon at school pickup, Mary Jones came over to me again. Her son Timothy was playing nearby, but I immediately noticed she looked shaken, as if she had been crying. As a teacher, you get trained to read those signs. "Mr. D, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked, her voice wavering. "Of course. Just park over there and meet me at the benches." I always joked that those benches near the pickup zone were my office. She parked, then joined me while Timothy kicked a ball around. She hesitated, then finally began. "I don't know how much you know about what's been happening at the gym." I kept my face steady. "I know Terry, my wife, enjoys it there, says it keeps her in shape." She bit her lip, clearly wrestling with herself. Then she blurted out, "There are things you need to know." I cut to the chase. "Does this have to do with Philip Bonte?" Her expression hardened instantly. "You have no idea just how much it has to do with that pig." "I can imagine," I replied carefully, "but go on." Tears welled in her eyes. "It targets women at the gym, regulars. He watches, waits, and then pounces." I asked how she knew. She looked away, ashamed. "Because I was one of them, until last month. We met every Friday at 12:30. Her voice faltered as though reliving it. She confessed how she had believed there could be a future with him. Divorced, lonely, missing intimacy, Bonte had filled a void, until suddenly another woman replaced her. He dropped her cold with nothing but a half-hearted, "Sorry, can't anymore." She gave a bitter laugh through tears. "I thought I was special. Turns out I was just another notch." I sat stunned. How could she unload this on me, her child's teacher? She must have been truly desperate. Trying to offer some comfort, I murmured, "Relationships aren't always what they seem." Her eyes narrowed, searching my face. Then she whispered, "You already know, don't you, about him and Terry?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, I know." Mary reached for my arm. "Then please believe me, he'll keep doing this until someone stops him. He doesn't care who he hurts, as long as his ego's fed. He even brags about it at bars with his buddies." Her tone sharpened. "If you need my help to make him pay, just say the word. That man deserves to be brought down." She called for Timothy and drove off, leaving me in silence.
I sat there, mind racing. Oddly, I felt a flicker of relief. Her confession made my plan for revenge seem less like an act of a betrayed husband and more like a moral obligation. Bonte wasn't just wrecking my life, he was a predator preying on countless women. The question now was, how many more? I started piecing together his schedule. The gym was open every day except Mondays, and he seemed to be there constantly. Using the number listed at the gym, I tracked down his address, just 3 blocks from our house. No wonder it was so easy for him to sneak over for sessions with my wife. I told Terry that my doctor had recommended daily evening walks around 5 p.m. Luckily, she showed no interest in joining me. That gave me the perfect cover. Since I knew it wouldn't interfere with her own meetings, everything went smoothly. During my first evening walk, I headed straight to Bonte's address and discovered that he lived in a ground-floor apartment among several similar buildings. His car wasn't there, so I lingered nearby to catch his return. He usually left our house well before 6 p.m., which meant he almost always came back around that time. Sure enough, at exactly 6 p.m., he walked into his apartment. It became a routine, day after day, whenever I was free to go out. On days I had staff meetings and couldn't leave, I assumed he still followed the same pattern. I began to suspect that his evenings at the gym weren't really about exercise, but about meeting different women.
To confirm this, I adjusted my schedule, starting my walks earlier and watching his daily movements more closely. Eventually, I decided to take a full week off from work just to investigate. I went to an electronics store and purchased surveillance equipment, a long-range listening device, motion-triggered HD cameras with audio, and an external hard drive for storage. On Monday, after setting everything up, I installed the first camera inside Bonte's apartment. Luckily, his place was small, almost like a studio with a kitchenette and dining space. One camera was enough to cover the entire living area, except the bedroom. Breaking in was shockingly easy. He hid his keys under the doormat. Careless. All I had to do was wait for him to head to the gym, slip inside, place the camera, and leave. From then on, every sound or movement in Bonte's apartment was recorded and streamed straight to my laptop, time-stamped and secure. That same evening, I got my first footage, Bonte eating takeout in front of the TV before heading to bed at 9 p.m. The next day, I slipped into the gym through the back entrance after closing time and set up a second camera in a private room where clients were usually assessed. This was the same room Bonte often used for one-on-one sessions. By Wednesday, when Terry went out shopping, I had already installed the third and fourth cameras, one in our bedroom and another in the living room. Reviewing Tuesday's recordings shocked me, though deep down I wasn't surprised. Bonte woke up, went out for breakfast, then came back and made a phone call. "Julie, hey, it's me. He's gone. See you at 12:30. Wear what I told you. Don't worry, I'll be careful. No one will see me come over. You said he's out for 3 days? Perfect. I'll come Thursday and Friday too. We'll talk later. Love you." He hung up with a spring in his step, practically glowing. On Thursday, I set up in the garage with my laptop, waiting. As expected, the camera caught him returning with breakfast again, then calling Terry. She answered, "Good thing my husband left for work. See you at 12:30 like always." That was the breaking point. Later, I asked Mary, Terry's mother, to help me compile a list of all the women Bonte had been involved with in the past. She attacked the task with energy, and within a week, I had names and addresses. To my horror, Terry's name was on that list too. At this point, our house meant nothing to me. It wasn't a home anymore, just a building. Terry noticed the emptiness, but I brushed it off, saying I was reorganizing my things. Meanwhile, I secretly prepared for the end. I met with a divorce attorney, set up new bank accounts and insurance under my name only, moved our vacation savings to my private account, and switched to a new SIM card. I even changed the beneficiaries of my retirement plan to our children. I gathered all the evidence, surveillance footage, phone transcripts, photographs. I placed it all in folders along with the names and contact details of the women Bonte had been with. I even included the address of a local clinic for STD testing, since most of his affairs were unprotected. On our kitchen table, I left divorce papers, DVDs of their encounters, printed stills, and my wedding ring, cut in half and smeared with grime. Beside it was a note. "Terry, this ruined ring is what's left of our marriage. Do not contact me. If you must, do it through the attorney listed in the documents. I've requested a restraining order at the school, so do not come there. Any disturbance will result in immediate police intervention. Our children know the truth, so don't expect to rewrite the story." Then I left. In the weeks that followed, everything fell apart for them. Word of the scandal spread quickly. The gym owner was forced to shut down and leave town. Bonte was later found beaten in an alley downtown. Divorce filings surged in our area, and several houses went up for sale. Terry came home that day, found my farewell package, and fainted on the spot. A neighbor called an ambulance. She later tried to contact me, but I ignored every attempt. Eventually, she even stormed the school, which ended in her arrest. After that, her efforts stopped. Our children didn't hold back. They confronted her openly, disgusted by her betrayal. Thankfully, they had inherited stronger values from me, not her. The divorce went through, and financial matters were settled. Terry had to sell the house and move into a smaller place on the outskirts of town. By then, she was known around the community as the gym slut. Every time she went out, whispers and mocking glances followed. Shame and depression eventually pushed her into psychiatric care. As for me, I kept teaching, rebuilt my life, and now live peacefully in my new home.
7 years after our breakup, my ex showed up at my door with a child, demanding child support. A moment later, my wife stepped outside, and that was when my life truly went off the rails. Cindy and I met in college. We were both 23 when we started dating, and we stayed together for 4 years. After graduation, we rented an apartment and lived there for about a year, until she suddenly left me without any explanation. Cindy was a year older than me and in her final year of college when we met. I was painfully shy, so she was the one who made the first move. She asked me out. She was the first to say, "I love you." 6 months into the relationship, she was also the one who suggested we move in together after college. She was an amazing girlfriend in many ways, kind, affectionate, deeply emotional, but there was one serious issue: her overwhelming insecurity. I'm not sure where it came from. Maybe it was because I rarely initiated things in the relationship, or maybe it was something deeper, but she was constantly jealous and suspicious. She hated it whenever I talked to other women, no matter who they were. After a few arguments, I stopped talking to all my female friends. Cindy mattered more to me than any friendship. I cut off not only friends from college, but also girls I'd known since high school, people I'd been close to for over 5 years. Today, I'm back in touch with them. Cindy is no longer part of my life, and my wife has no problem with me having friends of any gender. But back then, I was only allowed to spend time with guys, and even that was restricted. Cindy didn't allow boys' nights, convinced they were just excuses to go drinking, get drunk, and hook up with someone. It felt unfair. She forbade me from seeing anyone without her because of her insecurity, but at the time, I couldn't fully grasp how unhealthy this was. I was deeply in love with her and believed she loved me just as much. She constantly told me she couldn't live without me, that she saw no future without me, that I was everything to her. So I stayed. I wanted to marry her. That was all I wanted back then. Over time, though, the relationship became harder and harder to survive. She grew more suspicious, more controlling, more unstable. Once we were living together, I couldn't do anything without her hovering behind me. She checked my phone regularly, tracked my movements, and if I didn't tell her exactly where I was, she threatened not to let me back into the apartment. By this point, it's probably clear how toxic things had become. What still amazes me is that despite everything, she was the one who ended things. The breakup happened over something incredibly small. One afternoon, my sister Lauren dropped by unannounced, something she occasionally did. Normally, she would message both of us beforehand so Cindy wouldn't get suspicious or think I had another woman over. But that day, Cindy wasn't home. She was visiting a friend. She was allowed to see her friends. I was not allowed to question it. Lauren and I talked for about 2 hours. Then her boss called and she had to rush back to work. Before leaving, she pulled out a lipstick to touch up her makeup, and in her hurry, she accidentally left it on the couch. I didn't even notice. Cindy came home minutes later, cheerful and relaxed, until she sat down on the couch. She jumped up instantly, holding the lipstick she had just sat on. I knew immediately that I was doomed. I told her the truth right away. I explained that Lauren had stopped by during her lunch break, that she used the lipstick before heading back to work, and that she must have forgotten it in her rush. Cindy didn't believe a word. She said Lauren usually texted both of us before visiting. This time she hadn't. Cindy also claimed it made no sense for Lauren to use lipstick at our place, since my sister rarely wore makeup. She was convinced I had brought another woman into our home. She completely lost control. She started screaming, swearing, throwing things, first pillows, then books, then she crossed a line. She grabbed the TV remote and threw it straight at me. I'd barely managed to dodge it. That was the moment I had to get out. I ran into the bedroom and locked the door. I didn't have my phone with me, so I couldn't call anyone for help. I sat alone in that room for nearly an hour while she screamed outside, accusing me of betraying her. She sounded unhinged. I was genuinely afraid. Eventually, the screaming stopped. I gathered the courage to step outside.
The apartment was empty. The front door was open. I didn't text or call her for the next couple of hours, assuming she went out to cool off, but when she still hadn't returned by midnight, I tried calling her. The call wouldn't go through. After a few attempts, I realized she had blocked me. I tried messaging her, blocked there too. She had also removed me from all her social media. I panicked and tried contacting her friends, but none of them answered. I later realized I was likely blocked by them as well. For weeks, I tried everything to reach her. She ignored me completely. After nearly a month, I finally gave up. I understood she didn't want to be found. I was devastated. The months that followed were the darkest period of my life. I don't even know how I survived it. I went to work, came home, missed her endlessly, and pretended everything was fine. People told me I was better off without her. I didn't feel that way. I stayed in that apartment for a full year, hoping she might come back. I thought if I stayed, she would know where to find me. When I finally moved out, I buried the last hope of ever seeing her again. We never got closure. That unresolved ending remains one of the deepest pains I carry. I fell into a severe depression and avoided women entirely, afraid that moving on would make me a traitor to Cindy. That changed when I met my current wife, Emmy. She was a coworker, warm, kind, welcoming, not just to me, but to everyone in the office. She was beautiful, intelligent, and had an incredible personality. Despite all my efforts to keep my distance, I fell in love with her within a few months. I'd promised myself I'd never enter another relationship after Cindy, but Emmy changed everything. We've been together for almost 4 years now, married for 2. I'm genuinely happy with her. And until recently, I'd almost completely forgotten about Cindy, until the day she suddenly reappeared in my life.
7 years had passed since our breakup, or more accurately, since the moment she erased me from her life as if I had never mattered, all because of a ridiculous argument. Last weekend, my wife and I were simply relaxing at home when someone suddenly rang the doorbell. I went to answer it. Before I even had time to fully process who was standing there, she shoved a small boy into my arms. He looked about 7 years old. Cindy immediately demanded that I pay child support for the past 7 years. She didn't give me a chance to say a single word. She started screaming, claiming that for 7 years she had been trying to find me so her son could finally have a father. She accused me of running away from responsibility and insisted that I owed her years of unpaid support. I stood there in silence while she yelled. I didn't even know how to react. I was completely stunned. I just stood there like an idiot while she kept shouting. The accusations made no sense. I had waited an entire year after she vanished, hoping she would come back. She was the one who left me, not the other way around, and I was absolutely certain that the child wasn't mine. I stayed silent only because I was in shock. I couldn't even speak. When Emmy realized I had disappeared for a while, she came outside to see what was going on, and that was when everything flipped upside down. The moment Cindy saw my wife, all the color drained from her face. It was instantly clear that she was in serious trouble. At the time, I didn't yet understand why, but it was obvious that seeing Emmy completely rattled her. Emmy looked just as shocked to see Cindy standing at our door. Before I could say anything, the two of them started screaming at each other. I couldn't even follow what they were arguing about, but it was obvious they knew each other. This wasn't a first encounter. They went straight for each other, hurling insults, throwing the most vile words imaginable back and forth. Meanwhile, I stood there silently next to the boy, trying to understand what the hell was happening. Then, Emmy finally brought out the heavy artillery. She told Cindy that if she didn't leave immediately, she was calling the police. That clearly wasn't an option Cindy wanted. She looked absolutely furious, but after one last round of insults and hateful looks thrown at both of us, she backed down. The moment Emmy repeated that she was calling the cops, Cindy grabbed her son and bolted as fast as she could. I had no idea what I had just witnessed. I assumed Emmy would explain everything once Cindy was gone. Instead, things somehow got even stranger. As soon as the door closed, Emmy turned to me and started yelling, asking how I could do this to her, how I could hide something like this from her. I still said nothing. I just stared at her in complete confusion. Her accusations made no sense to me. She acted as if I had deliberately hidden my past relationship with Cindy, but that wasn't true. I had always been open with Emmy. I told her everything about my ex. The only thing I hadn't done was show her pictures of Cindy. Not because I was hiding anything, there was simply nothing to show. I had lost my old phone before we moved into the new house. Every photo I had of Cindy was on that phone. When I lost it, I lost all of them. On top of that, I had already deleted most of our photos from social media because they were too painful to look at. Seeing reminders of how she disappeared without explanation hurt too much. So, first I deleted the photos, then I lost the phone, and that was it. No pictures left anywhere. I never tried to recover them. Honestly, I thought it was for the best. Fewer reminders. A few group photos still existed on my friends' accounts, but I asked them to remove those too. I didn't want to see myself with her. If Emmy had ever asked to see what Cindy looked like, I would have shown her whatever I could find. But she never asked, and digging through other people's albums for old photos felt pointless, especially since Emmy never showed any interest. So she never saw Cindy's face. After everything that happened, Emmy said she needed to go stay with her parents for a while, to cool off, sort through her feelings, and maybe come back later. I begged her to stay, but she left anyway. She said she couldn't be in the same space with me right now and needed time alone to process everything. I didn't even fully understand what she meant. She didn't explain. The whole situation felt like déjà vu, like history repeating itself, just like with Cindy. I was completely crushed. The next day, I finally forced myself to start making calls, trying to understand what was really going on. I called her parents first. They immediately attacked me, saying I should have told them about Cindy beforehand and not let everything explode like this. They tore into me and then hung up without giving me any real answers. Desperate, I called Emmy's older sister. She was the only person left who might explain something. I was lost, and she was my last hope. When she answered, I told her everything that had happened. That was when I finally learned the truth. Cindy and Emmy were cousins. Cindy's real name was Cynthia. The names I'm using here aren't their real ones, and I never called her that myself, which is why Emmy never made the connection. Apparently, Cindy had always been cruel and had been tormenting Emmy since childhood. Their relationship had been strained for years, but everything completely collapsed on Emmy's 18th birthday. Cindy slept with Emmy's boyfriend, the one she had been dating for nearly 3 years. The entire family exploded. Emmy's mother, who was Cindy's mother's sister, caused a massive scandal over Cindy's behavior. Naturally, each side defended their own child, and the families completely cut contact after that. But it didn't end there. Cindy continued to harass Emmy by spreading disgusting rumors about her online. Things escalated so badly that the parents had to intervene again. Only then did Cindy finally leave Emmy alone, and only because her parents forced her to. The cousins never spoke again, until they met again because of me. After that conversation, everything finally made sense. I understood why Emmy lost control when she saw Cindy on our doorstep. Seeing her, or Cynthia as Emmy knew her, dragged painful memories back to the surface for both of us. I spoke to Emmy after that call. Her sister had clearly spoken to her as well, because for the first time, Emmy finally answered my call. Until then, she had been rejecting every one. I told her I understood why she reacted the way she did, but I also told her the truth, that she never asked, never shown any interest in Cindy, and that I never meant to hide anything from her. That made complete sense to me. All of that was in the past, and she was my future. If she had asked me even once about Cindy, I would have shown her a photo immediately, and all of this would have been resolved long ago. I tried to calmly explain my point of view, but for some reason she still believed I was at fault, that I should have talked more about my past relationship. According to her, if I had done that, she might have asked questions herself, and we would have discovered everything earlier. I honestly didn't understand what exactly I had done wrong, and I told her that. That only made things worse. She became even angrier and stopped talking to me, calling me stupid and self-absorbed before hanging up. She said she had gone through hell because of Cindy and expected me to understand that. I replied that I had gone through hell with her too, but I didn't see Emmy trying to understand me. That seemed to hit a nerve. She snapped, "Fine, you win the contest for having the worst ex," and ended the call. Since then, she hasn't answered my calls or messages. I feel like I completely screwed everything up. My wife doesn't lose her temper easily, so it was obvious this was a deeply painful and sensitive subject for her. But damn it, it was painful for me too. Putting all the blame on me alone felt unfair, especially when I genuinely didn't understand what I was supposed to have done differently. The only thing I was grateful for was that Cindy hadn't shown up again. If she kept inserting herself into my life, this mess would only get worse. Update 1. First of all, thank you to everyone who shared advice and thoughts. I truly appreciated every response. For those who asked whether my wife had ever mentioned being bullied in the past, no, she hadn't. She never talked about her childhood. I only learned about it after speaking with her sister. Even though I knew this wasn't technically my fault, I decided to take initiative and go to my wife's parents' house. I wanted to save our relationship. I understood that if I wanted to be with Emmy, I had to try to fix things, even if I wasn't the one who caused them. Because we're supposed to fight the problem together, not each other. Yesterday, after almost a week of silence, I finally went to see her. Both Emmy and her parents were surprised to see me at the door. I didn't wait for their reaction. The moment the door opened, I hugged her tightly. She froze for a second, then hugged me back. We stood there like that for several minutes without saying a word. The past week had been brutal for both of us, and we both realized that more than anything, we just wanted to be together. Who was right and who was wrong no longer mattered. As soon as I let go, she apologized and broke down crying. She admitted she had genuinely thought she'd lost me forever because of her outburst after Cindy's visit and the way she behaved afterwards. She admitted she acted irrationally and unfairly, apologizing over and over. Her parents and I comforted her while she cried. It meant a lot to see that she recognized she hadn't been fair to me. At the same time, I felt guilty for not coming to see her sooner, because that delay was what finally pushed her over the edge. After we talked everything through, she packed her things and came home with me. We're back together now. I can't say everything is completely back to normal, but we're working on it. We're slowly unpacking everything that happened over the past week, including Cindy's visit. And we still needed to figure out why she showed up in the first place. Update 2. We finally learned why Cindy came to our house. No surprises, she wanted money. She made that clear immediately by demanding child support for a child I had absolutely no connection to, emotionally or biologically. Emmy and her sister made several calls to figure out what was really going on, since the families hadn't spoken in years. They confirmed what I already knew: the child is not mine. Apparently, she had been seeing another man for years. I strongly suspect she was cheating on me during the final months of our relationship. I don't have proof, but everything lines up. She dumped me on the most ridiculous excuse and erased me from my life like I never existed. It makes perfect sense that she already had someone else lined up. Most likely, she was already pregnant when she left me and just needed a reason to disappear. The incident of my sister was the perfect excuse. Many of her relatives knew about the other man, but I was forbidden from communicating with her family unless Cindy herself was present, so I knew nothing and never would have if she hadn't made the massive mistake of showing up at my house trying to pressure me into giving me money. It turned out the man she was with left her a few months ago. She had quit her job when she got involved with him and had no savings after giving birth. When he disappeared, she was left with nothing. He did exactly what she had done to me, vanished without explanation. Now she's barely scraping by. Her parents refused to support her financially, saying they needed to save for retirement. If they supported her and the child, they wouldn't be able to retire at all. Harsh, maybe, but now her desperation made sense. After the incident at my house, none of Cindy's relatives have seen her. I'm sure someone will eventually track her down or report her, because rumors say she's already scammed a few people out of money. They're just rumors for now, but after what she tried to pull with me, I wouldn't be surprised if they were true. Update 3. We decided to start couples therapy along with individual sessions. It turns out we hadn't dealt with our past as well as we thought. Cindy's mere appearance was enough to throw our lives into chaos. We couldn't allow that to happen again. As for Cindy, according to some relatives, she's now living with a new man she met online just days ago. He's already madly in love with her and invited her to move in. Her parents are devastated, not just by her behavior, but by the fact that she told them they're no longer allowed to see their grandchild. I'm not taking her side, but honestly, what did they expect? They turned away when she needed them most, and now they're shocked things aren't fine. They've always enabled her behavior, towards me and towards Emmy. Her parents were never particularly pleasant people, and she's no different. The apple didn't fall far from the tree. What truly breaks my heart is that a child is the one paying the price for all her terrible decisions. That's where this story ends.
My husband's daughter from his first marriage tried to claim his house through a will, but court revealed the most terrifying truth. I'm 45 years old. I've been married to my husband, Michael, for 10 years now. He's 50. We were both in our early 30s when we first met at a local art gallery. We were standing in front of the same painting and started talking about it. It felt like instant connection, the kind where you feel like you've known someone your whole life. Michael asked me out, and the more time we spent together, the deeper that feeling became. I'm the oldest of 3 children. My family never had much money. We survived, but luxuries were rare. Fast food was something we only had on birthdays. Our father taught us early on that hard work was the only way forward. I studied relentlessly, worked my way into college on my own, and even modeled part-time to support myself. By graduation, I had no student debt. I kept climbing professionally and was working as a junior lawyer when Michael and I met. Michael's background was very different. His family was financially comfortable. His father had a well-paid position with strong benefits, so money was never a concern for them. His parents paid for his college, and thanks to his father's influence, Michael landed an internship at the same company. From there, he built his own career through genuine effort and dedication. Despite our different upbringings, we bonded deeply over a shared love of art and music. That's what brought us together. Michael has a daughter from his previous marriage, Candace. From the very beginning, she disliked me. She was distant, cold, and avoided conversations whenever we were in the same room. It felt like she blamed me for her parents' divorce, even though I met Michael long after it was finalized. I understood her pain and tried to give her time and space. For context, Michael and his ex-wife, Amelia, were married only 3 years. They met in college and married young. After the wedding, everything changed. Amelia stayed home while Michael worked long hours. One day, Michael returned early from a business trip and found Amelia in bed with his best friend, Tom. In a single moment, he lost both his marriage and his closest friendship. Devastated, Michael filed for divorce. The process was brutal. Amelia fought aggressively to keep the house, even though it legally belonged to Michael. The conflict escalated into a bitter custody battle over Candace. Because of Amelia's infidelity, the court ruled against her claim to the house, but granted shared custody so Candace could maintain a relationship with both parents. Amelia never forgave losing the house. Over the years, she filled Candace's head with resentment toward her father. Michael chose not to tell his daughter about her mother's affair, trying to protect her from the truth. I learned all of this early in our relationship. Michael wanted complete honesty, and I respected that deeply. At one point, Michael invited Candace to join us on a trip to Africa, hoping it would help us bond. I truly believed it might change things. Unfortunately, it was a disaster. Candace was hostile the entire trip. She snapped at me constantly, had angry outbursts, and hurled insults whenever I got close to Michael. She called me a gold digger more than once. Michael scolded her, but she only smirked, making it clear she had no intention of accepting me. Despite everything, our love was strong. After a whirlwind romance, we got married. It was a small ceremony with close friends and family. Candace and Amelia were invited. Neither showed up. The first years of our marriage were wonderful. We traveled often and focused on our careers. I loved my job and had no intention of giving it up. Amelia moved in with Tom after the divorce. Candace lived in an apartment Michael had bought for her and worked as a social media manager at a reputable company. 3 years into our marriage, we welcomed our son, Nick. My pregnancy was difficult, and Candace made it worse. Whenever Michael wasn't around, she made cruel comments about my weight and appearance. She told me Michael would leave me because I was fat and disgusting now. It shattered me. When I finally told Michael, he immediately stopped allowing Candace to visit our home. From then on, they only met in public places to protect my well-being. After Nick was born, we were overjoyed. I chose to return to work after maternity leave, and we hired a nanny to help. Financially, we were comfortable, but my independence meant deeply to me. Candace's hostility only grew after Nick's birth. At family gatherings, she would criticize him, mock him, and intentionally upset him until he ran to us in tears. I could tolerate her hatred toward me, but not toward my child. I banned her from our home entirely, and we stopped hosting family events. As we grew older, Michael and I began thinking seriously about the future. We decided to draft wills to put everything in order. Michael had already bought Candace an apartment, so he named me and our son as beneficiaries of the family home. Candace would receive his savings, investments, and remaining assets. I had my own assets, which I planned to leave entirely to Nick. We both felt this was fair and ensured our son's stability. When Amelia and Candace found out about the will, all hell broke loose. I don't know who told them, maybe Michael, maybe his parents, but their reaction was explosive. Amelia called Michael, demanding the house, claiming she was his first wife and deserved it. Michael refused. He reminded her that he paid child support, covered Candace's education, bought her an apartment, and would continue supporting her, but the house was meant for his son. Furious, Amelia sent me a long message filled with insults and threats. I showed it to Michael. He told me not to respond and to block her immediately. The next day, Candace showed up at our door, visibly upset. I knew exactly why she was there. To avoid exposing Nick to conflict, I arranged for my parents to pick him up. Once we were alone, Candace made her demand clear. She insisted that Nick and I give up the house because as Michael's first child, she believed it was rightfully hers. Despite my anger, I stayed silent and let Michael speak. He calmly told her that he had always provided for her and always would. Michael assured Candace that he intended to leave her his savings. However, he also had a responsibility toward me and our son. As his wife, securing the family home for us was his way of ensuring our safety and stability. Candace immediately shifted the blame onto me, claiming that I should be the one to do the right thing. I calmly stated that I fully supported my husband's decision, which only made her angrier. She raised her voice and threatened to take me to court. At that point, I had no desire to escalate the conflict and asked her to leave us alone. As expected, a few weeks later, I received a court summons. Candace and Amelia had filed a lawsuit against me over the property. The claim stated that I had married Michael for his money and manipulated him into leaving me the family home. Michael and I consulted our lawyer, who confidently told us that neither Candace nor Amelia had any solid legal standing. Still, despite his reassurance, I couldn't shake my anxiety, especially because I didn't want our son dragged into this mess. As the court date approached, the tension in our home became unbearable. In court, Amelia's lawyer was relentless. He tried to argue that Michael was obligated to prioritize his firstborn daughter above everyone else. They pushed for a full jury trial to determine ownership of the house. Because we lived in Colorado, a jury trial was indeed required, making everything far more complicated. The looming trial kept Michael and me under constant stress. Amelia's legal team played dirty, digging into our past, searching for anything they could twist against us. Our lawyer did his best, but the pressure was overwhelming. Then something completely unexpected happened. Tom, the same man Michael had caught Amelia cheating with years ago, contacted us and insisted on meeting. Michael had cut him out of his life entirely after the affair and didn't want to see him, but I convinced him to listen. I felt that maybe this could help resolve everything faster. When Tom arrived, we half expected it to be another scheme orchestrated by Amelia's lawyer. Instead, Tom came to confess something devastating. Michael sat frozen as Tom admitted that his affair with Amelia had lasted far longer than anyone knew. It had begun even before her pregnancy. I held my breath as Tom continued. When Amelia became pregnant, she told Tom she believed the child was actually his. However, because Michael was financially stable, she chose to hide the truth and remain married to him. Tom begged her to tell Michael the truth, but she refused every time. I was stunned. Amelia had carried this lie for decades, all while aggressively fighting for the house, knowing full well she was hiding something monstrous. Tom explained that he stayed silent because he believed Amelia loved him. But seeing the pain this lawsuit caused us finally made him realize who she really was. He broke down, crying, and begged Michael for forgiveness. Michael remained silent, completely shattered. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak watching my husband, a man who had believed his entire life that Candace was his daughter, learn that it had all been built on a lie. I had tolerated Amelia's cruelty and Candace's insults for years in the hope of maintaining some semblance of peace, but now there was no point in staying quiet. I immediately contacted our lawyer and shared Tom's confession. He explained that for it to hold weight in court, we needed concrete evidence, a DNA test. So we invited Candace over for dinner under the pretense of reconciliation. The plan was simple: discreetly obtain a glass or utensil for testing. Candace agreed to come, though she behaved exactly as she had always had, rude, cruel, and demeaning toward both me and my son. She mocked us, confident that she and her mother would win the case and that I would soon lose everything. I stayed silent, hoping this would be the last time we ever had to endure her behavior. After she left, we immediately handed her cup to our lawyer. On the morning of the court hearing, we received confirmation. Tom had told the truth. Candace was not Michael's biological daughter. I felt a wave of relief, followed immediately by deep sorrow for my husband, who had been manipulated and deceived for so many years. I told our lawyer I was ready to testify. He agreed it was the best course of action. Standing before the jury, I felt a storm of emotions: anger at Amelia's deception, compassion for Michael, and fierce determination to protect my family. I answered every question honestly. I spoke about my background, my career, and how I had never depended on Michael financially. I described the years of emotional abuse, mockery, and humiliation I endured from Amelia and Candace. Screenshots were presented as evidence. I explained how Candace had refused to attend our wedding and later verbally attacked our son. Then I revealed Tom's confession to the jury, the truth about Candace's paternity and the secret Amelia had hidden for decades. Candace stared at me in disbelief, whispering urgently to her lawyer. Our attorney then presented the DNA test results, confirming everything I had said. I watched Amelia's face crumble as the truth finally caught up with her. Candace looked like her world was collapsing, just as ours had,
when we learned the truth. The courtroom was silent. Everything was clear. Amelia and Candace had no legal claim left. The jury didn't take long to reach their verdict. The judge ruled that the family home would remain with us, exactly as Michael had intended. Candace and Amelia were found to have no legal rights to the property. In the days following the trial, reactions from friends and relatives were mixed. Most understood our decision and supported us. Others believed it was cruel to reveal the truth publicly, and Candace's life had been destroyed. But the truth is simple. The lies destroyed it, long before we ever stepped into that courtroom.
At the very least, I hope this situation became a life lesson for Candace. I truly believe that one day she may understand that this kind of strategy doesn't work. The truth always comes out eventually, and when it does, there are consequences. As for Michael, I think if Candace had treated him with genuine respect and kindness over the years, even after learning the truth about her biological father, he might have chosen to leave her something more. But that bridge had already been burned. Update 1. 3 days have passed since my last update. I read every message and piece of advice. Many people suggested that Candace might have already known about her mother's lie, but I truly don't believe that's the case. I saw her face in court when the DNA results were revealed. That shock was real. Winning the case lifted an enormous weight off my shoulders. I've decided not to dwell on the opinions of relatives who think we acted wrongly. We didn't drag ourselves into court. Amelia and Candace did. We simply told the truth. What worries me now is my husband. Michael is still struggling to process everything. His world has been turned upside down. Since learning that Candace isn't biologically his, he barely eats and hardly sleeps. I can't imagine the pain of realizing that the child you loved and raised was part of such a deep betrayal. Amelia already put him through hell during the divorce. Now, learning that Tom, the man who slept with his wife, was also the biological father of his first child, has shattered him completely. I suggested therapy. He needs professional help to process this level of trauma. I scheduled an appointment for him, and he starts next week. Update 2. A month has passed, and we're slowly finding our footing again. Michael has been attending therapy regularly, and while healing will take time, I can see small improvements. Unexpectedly, Candace reached out to us last week. Honestly, I assumed she would never speak to us again. She called to apologize for everything we had gone through. I wasn't sure whether it was genuine remorse or simply anger toward her mother, but I chose not to interrogate her intentions. She admitted she had always been jealous of me, believing that I had taken her father away. She confessed she hated me, something I already knew. For years, she believed her father had betrayed her mother. But during the trial, when the truth came out, and it became clear that Amelia was the one who cheated, Candace realized she had been living a lie her entire life. She begged Michael not to leave her. He told her that regardless of biology, he would always be her father. That broke her completely. She cried harder than I had ever seen. She also apologized to me for how she treated me and said she hoped I could forgive her someday. I didn't pretend everything was suddenly fine. It wasn't. I told her honestly that I needed time before I could even think about being in the same room with her. Right now, my priority is my own family, my husband and my son. During the court battle, my child didn't get the attention he deserved. I'm planning a quiet family vacation to help us heal and reconnect. If anything else happens, I'll update again. Update 3. 3 months passed with no contact from Amelia until she showed up at our door. I hesitated to let her in, but I didn't want a public scene with neighbors listening. We made it clear that any outburst would result in the police being called. She came in tears. Tom had left her. He told her to move out by the end of the month and made it clear he no longer wanted to marry her. She had nowhere to go. She wanted to move in with Candace, who had absolutely refused. We learned that after the trial, Candace completely cut off contact with her mother, blaming her for years of manipulation and lies. Amelia came to us, hoping we would convince Candace to let her stay. Before I could even respond, Michael finally snapped. For the first time, I saw him truly lose his composure. He told Amelia that the apartment was bought solely for Candace, and only Candace had the right to decide who lived there. He reminded Amelia that she had never apologized for the affair and now expected help. He said he was glad Tom had finally seen her for who she really was and walked away. Amelia tried to justify herself, saying she was afraid of being thrown out while pregnant if she had told the truth back then. I couldn't listen anymore. We gave her a chance to speak, but there was nothing left to say. I asked her to leave. After she left, Michael contacted Candace to warn her if her mother moved in, getting her out later would be nearly impossible. Candace assured him that would never happen. She planned to change the locks and formally tell her mother she was done. As for me, I'm exhausted beyond words. Recently, Michael and I have been seriously discussing selling our house and moving to another state, leaving all of this behind for good. For the sake of our son and our marriage, we need peace. The decision isn't easy, but after Amelia's visit, it became clear that she would never stop trying to insert herself into our lives. Michael agreed. His job allows him to work remotely, and I'm willing to start over at a new firm if it means a healthier future for our family. Next month, we'll begin the process of selling our home. If all goes well, by the end of the year, we'll be starting a new life somewhere far away from all this toxicity. It's time to close this chapter and finally move forward.
My husband secretly booked business class tickets for himself and his mother for our honeymoon, leaving me with a seat in economy class. So I exposed him right there in the airport lobby, in front of everyone. I'm 32 and my husband Van is 36. We got married recently. We had been together for 4 years and engaged for 8 months. I met him when I was 29. At the time, I worked as a bar manager, and he used to come in regularly as a customer. We started talking, and eventually he asked me out. I turned him down at first, but he kept coming back to the bar, always finding excuses to chat with me. My coworkers joked that it was kind of sweet. Eventually, I decided to give him a chance, and from there, everything took off. Van is, in many ways, wonderful. He's affectionate, kind, emotionally mature, financially independent, and always plans our dates. The only issue I ever had was his mother, Naomi. Before anyone judges me, I want to explain. When I first met her, I actually liked her. Van was 13 when his parents divorced. His father, Matt, cheated on Naomi with a coworker. Naomi was completely devastated. They had been together since college, and she believed they would grow old together. Matt begged for forgiveness, saying he had never been with anyone else and that this was a stupid mistake caused by losing his head. But Naomi refused to forgive him and filed for divorce. What Matt did was awful, but Van was too young to fully understand what was happening. He was just heartbroken watching his family fall apart. He lived with his mother during the week to stay close to school and spent weekends with his father. Despite his mistake, Matt was a good father to Van. He supported him, attended every school event and sports game, showed up for parent-teacher meetings, and most importantly, allowed Van to be himself. Naomi, on the other hand, became extremely strict after the divorce. Van believes her behavior changed because of the betrayal. She became obsessively controlling. According to Van, he wasn't allowed to stay out late with friends, date girls, go on school trips or picnics, be near lakes or pools, sleep over at friends' houses. When he told me about these rules, they sounded ridiculous. Van explained that his mother justified everything by saying she was lonely without him and just wanted to protect him from the world. Unsurprisingly, Van quickly realized he felt much more comfortable living with his father. Matt's rules were simple. Don't stay out too late, and always share your location when going out with friends in case of emergencies. When school trips came up, Naomi would forbid Van from going, but Matt would sign the permission forms and encourage him to participate.
This caused massive fights between Naomi and Matt, with Naomi threatening legal action. If Van wanted to hang out with friends, Naomi would say no, so he waited for weekends at his dad's place to finally have some freedom. As a teenager, he grew to hate living with his mother. They argued constantly. She criticized his clothes, his hair, and his friends. He spent most weekdays locked in his room, counting down the days until Friday, when he could escape to his dad's house. When Van was 17, Matt introduced him to his new partner, Heather. Heather is a kind woman who treated Van like her own son. She struggled with infertility and had accepted that she would never have children. Meeting Matt and learning he had a son was something she genuinely welcomed. Van adored her. She became a second mother to him. For Naomi, this was unacceptable. She couldn't tolerate another woman in her son's life. She caused endless scandals and tried to poison Van against Heather, claiming that Matt must have cheated with her during the marriage, which wasn't true. Heather entered Matt's life long after the divorce. Naomi refused to accept this reality and began making Matt's life difficult, even preventing him from seeing his son. When weekends came, Naomi would say Van couldn't go to his father because Heather was some unknown woman and she wouldn't allow her son to stay with strangers. The conflicts became uglier and uglier. When Van turned 18, he was accepted into 2 universities. Naomi pressured him to choose the one closest to her home so she could visit him every week. Van didn't like that university. It lacked proper programs in his field. He discussed it honestly with his father. Matt told him he should choose what was best for himself, regardless of Naomi's wishes, but Van was terrified of upsetting her. In the end, he chose the university farther away. Naomi exploded. She screamed that he was abandoning her, that all men were the same. She threatened to kick him out and said she wouldn't pay for his education unless he did what she wanted. Van called his father, and Matt immediately came to help him pack and move out. That was the last day Van lived with his mother.
Just to clarify, being someone's +1 meant that Van was expected to take his mother as his guest to various events, for example, company parties or work functions. From what I later understood, even when we traveled, she demanded that he constantly share his location, claiming it helped her sleep peacefully at night. All of this made me deeply uncomfortable. I could clearly see Van being torn apart between wanting a normal adult life and feeling obligated to take care of his emotionally unstable mother. He didn't want to meet all her demands, but he was terrified that she might do something extreme again. Unlike his mother, his father Matt was calm, grounded, and emotionally healthy. I had met Matt and his wife Heather many times, and they were always warm and welcoming. They never asked intrusive questions. Matt showed genuine interest in my life without ever trying to belittle me. I saw many of Matt's best qualities reflected in Van. That's probably why I stayed. I knew Van was more than the damage his mother had caused him. I understood that he needed therapy, and I gently encouraged him to seek it, but he always insisted that he was fine. When Van proposed to me, completely out of the blue, it became one of the happiest days of my life. He surprised me by bringing my parents and my best friend into town so they could be part of the moment. Matt and Heather were there too, congratulating us wholeheartedly. The only person missing was Naomi. Van said she wasn't feeling well. Honestly, I was relieved. I didn't want her saying something inappropriate in front of my parents. I knew they would instantly dislike her if she did. We were having a wonderful time when Van suddenly received a call from the hospital. His mother had fallen down the stairs. We all rushed there, but Naomi refused to see me or anyone else. She demanded that only Van be allowed into her room, so we waited outside. I found that strange. We were all there out of concern, but it didn't feel appropriate to say anything at the time. When Van came out, he said she would be fine. According to the doctor, she had a fracture and needed to stay overnight. Naomi wanted Van to stay with her. Matt immediately offered to stay instead, pointing out that she would be sleeping anyway and that Van should take me home. But Van refused.
He said his mother wouldn't like that, and he didn't want to upset her further. So we all went home. My parents and my friend helped me clean up afterward. Van booked them hotel rooms for the night, but they chose to stay with me instead. I think they could see how sad I was, that I wouldn't be spending the night with my fiancé on the very day he proposed. That should have been my first warning sign that things were only going to get worse. Wedding planning quickly turned into what Naomi wants. She interfered with my wedding dress, chose the flower girl, commented on Van's suit, controlled the guest list, the venue, almost every single detail. Van and I have long planned our honeymoon in Hawaii, but Naomi insisted that flying that far was unacceptable and that somewhere closer would be much better. That was when I finally tried to set a boundary. I told her calmly but firmly, no. Naomi was shocked and said it was disrespectful to speak to her that way. I replied honestly that the honeymoon was for Van and me, and the decision was ours. She immediately burst into tears, telling Van that I was excluding her, ignoring her, and pushing her out of his life. She accused me of trying to steal her son, which was absurd. I reminded her that I had already accepted her choice of officiant, venue, cake, and even the dresses for my bridesmaids. I had tried to accommodate her wishes wherever possible, but I would not allow her to dictate where we went on our honeymoon. Van was caught in the middle. He tried to talk to her, but she framed herself as a martyr, a mother sacrificing everything for her son. Later, I even sent her an apologetic message, knowing how much she meant to Van. Her reply chilled me. She said no woman would ever take her son away from her, and that I should know my place. I immediately showed the message to Van. He called his mother to confront her, but she accused me of trying to drive a wedge between them and insisted that he should always love and believe her more than me. I was deeply hurt. After the call, I told Van exactly how it made me feel. To his credit, he agreed. He reassured me that we would stick to our plan and go to Hawaii. I was relieved. It felt like Van was finally starting to set boundaries. I believed we could enjoy our honeymoon far away from her controlling presence. The wedding itself went smoothly, without major incidents. However, during the reception, my mother-in-law somehow managed to give a speech entirely about herself, emphasizing how much she had sacrificed in her life. It felt like a quiet attempt to reclaim attention even on our day. Still, I chose to focus on the positives. My parents, Matt, Heather, and our guests had a great time. We danced all night. I went to bed excited, knowing we were leaving for Hawaii the next day. On the morning of our honeymoon, I woke up in an amazing mood. Van and I headed to the airport, and I felt genuinely happy until we arrived. That's when I discovered that Van had booked himself a business class seat and me an economy seat. I was stunned. I would have happily paid for business class myself. Van had insisted on handling the travel arrangements, so I assumed we would be sitting together. When I asked him what was going on, he said he had found a great deal and upgraded his ticket, but there were no business class seats left for me. It didn't sit right with me. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He brushed it off, saying it wasn't a big deal, just a few hours. I told him that if it really didn't matter, then he could sit in economy while I took business class. He snapped. He accused me of being overly sensitive and said we'd see each other after landing. When I asked where he was going, he said he was heading to the business lounge. I was completely confused and hurt. I tried calling him, but he ignored every call. My suspicion grew stronger. Something felt very wrong. Then my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. She never called me directly unless she couldn't reach Van. I answered, intending to tell her that Van would call her back soon. Instead, she started asking where exactly I was sitting in the airport, which cafe, which lounge. Already overwhelmed, I finally asked her what she wanted. After a brief pause, she mockingly told me not to lose my composure because she was also flying with us on our honeymoon. I completely lost it. I shouted, demanding to know what kind of sick joke this was. Naomi calmly explained that she wanted to stay close to her son and didn't want him flying so far away, so she had convinced him to bring her along. I hung up, furious, and marched straight to the business lounge. Security didn't want to let me in, but I told them my husband was inside and that I urgently needed to speak to him about his mother. After a long argument, they finally let me through, and that's when I saw Van, sitting comfortably, scrolling through his phone.
So his phone had been in his hands the entire time. He had been deliberately ignoring my calls. I walked up to him and he looked up, clearly shocked to see me there with security. He asked what was going on, but I didn't waste time. I asked him directly if it was true that his mother was flying with us on our honeymoon. Van froze. I asked if that was the real reason he'd bought me a separate ticket, so I wouldn't find out that he was planning to spend our honeymoon with his mommy. His face turned bright red. People around us started staring. Even the security guard seemed invested in the scene. That was when my mother-in-law walked into the lounge, scanning the room for Van. When she saw us, she stopped dead in her tracks. I told Van that she herself had told me everything. That's when he started stumbling through excuses. He said that originally he had booked economy tickets for just the two of us, but Naomi had cried and begged him, and in an attempt to keep everyone happy, he brought separate tickets and tried to hide it from me. He claimed he had booked her a completely different hotel and that she wouldn't bother us. Naomi stepped in, as she always did. She said I should be grateful that her son loved her so much and that it was no big deal if she came along. After all, she had never been so far away from her boy before. I was shaking with rage. If we hadn't been in an airport, I would have lost it completely. Instead, I raised my voice and told my husband that I was ashamed to be married to a child who couldn't go anywhere without his mother. I said he looked more like her husband than her son. Van whispered that I was embarrassing him in front of respectable people and that we could talk about it after landing. I laughed in his face. I told him to enjoy his honeymoon with his mommy because I was done. Both of them stared at me in shock as I walked away. I tore my tickets in half and called a taxi home. Van ended up not flying either. He came home later and started yelling at me, saying I had no right to speak to me like that and that he was only trying to do the right thing. He said his mother flew alone because she didn't want to lose her ticket. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried. I couldn't even look at him. All of this happened yesterday, and ever since then I felt like I'm in a fog. I know with painful clarity that our marriage is over. He hasn't apologized. He barely speaks to me. And it hurts. Leaving a marriage is a massive step, especially when just 3 days ago I believed I would spend my entire life with him. That's why I came here. I needed to know if I was wrong for walking away after my husband tried to bring his mother on our honeymoon. Update 1. I'm overwhelmed by the support I received, hundreds of comments and private messages. When I wrote my post, I never expected so many strangers to care. After reading everything, I agree with those who said I needed to have one final, honest conversation with my husband. If he continues to side with his mother, I will have no choice but to end this marriage. I can't spend my entire life fighting this. Naomi clearly doesn't care about us, considering she still flew to Hawaii alone, fully aware that all of this chaos was caused by her. I'll update after we talk. Update 2. A month has passed since my last update, and a lot has happened. After the airport incident, I made a decision. The situation was unbearable, and I couldn't live in limbo without a real conversation. I packed my things and waited for Van to come home from work. That conversation would either save our marriage or destroy it. When Van walked in and saw me waiting, I saw surprise and fear flash across his face. I asked him to sit down and handed him a glass of water. The tension in the room was almost suffocating. We hadn't spoken since the incident because he still believed I owed him an apology. I took a deep breath and told him everything.
how his mother had made me feel all this time. I explained how I saw him change whenever she was around, how he seemed to become a different person. I told him I understood the crushing guilt he carried over her past, over her sacrifices, and how she constantly used that guilt to control him, but it was slowly destroying the foundation of our relationship. I cried as I explained how deeply she had invaded my life, not just our wedding, but even our honeymoon. I told him I fell in love with his kindness and warmth, but his relationship with his mother was tearing apart everything we had built. When I finished, I saw tears streaming down his face. He admitted he had no idea I felt this way. He said he had spent his entire life caring for his mother, living in constant fear that something terrible might happen to her. He confessed that he had become so used to putting her needs above everyone else's that he no longer knew how to stop. He admitted he knew bringing her on the honeymoon was wrong, but she leaned on his guilt and he gave in, convincing himself it would somehow be better for everyone. I told him that if his mother truly cared about him, she wouldn't have flown to Hawaii alone and left him behind. He nodded and admitted he had been blind to her manipulation until now. He broke down completely, dropped to his knees, and apologized over and over again. My heart shattered. I hugged him, realizing how much internal pain he was carrying. It became clear that he needed therapy, and if he truly recognized his mistakes and was willing to work on them, I was willing to give this marriage a chance. Within the next 2 weeks, Van booked appointments and began seeing a therapist. He also had an honest conversation with his father.
Update 3. Matt had no idea how bad things had gotten and was genuinely shocked by how far Naomi had pushed everything. His father told him the same thing I had, that it was time for Van to stop living in constant anxiety over his mother and finally start living his own life, without excuses. With the help of his therapist, Van decided to move to low contact with his mother. He understood that he needed space to untangle his thoughts and emotions. It wasn't an easy decision. Naomi was calling him non-stop, as expected. He hasn't told her yet that he's seeing a therapist. He knows she'll completely lose it when she finds out. He plans to tell her this coming weekend and ask for space. If she refuses, he's prepared to block her entirely. Overall, I see this as real progress and a necessary step toward healing our relationship. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but for the first time, I feel like we're moving in the right direction. Update 4, 3 months later. It's been 3 months since my last update, and I want to thank everyone who followed my story and supported me. The past few months have been an emotional roller coaster, and the encouragement from this community meant more to me than I can express. First of all, Van did talk to his mother after working through things in therapy. As expected, it went terribly. She unleashed a torrent of accusations, screaming that I had stolen him from her. She demanded that he divorce me, insisting that I was the cause of all the problems and that everything had been perfect before I came into his life. But this time, Van finally stood his ground. He firmly told her that he would no longer tolerate her manipulation. He made it clear that she had to respect our marriage and our private life. Then he made a difficult but decisive choice. He blocked her number. I did the same. It was necessary for our mental health and for the survival of our relationship. Of course, Naomi began telling anyone who would listen that her son had abandoned her and that she had been treated horribly. Gossip and rumors reached us through relatives and mutual acquaintances, but we stayed focused on our own lives. Matt, Van's father, played an important role during this time. He checked in on Naomi occasionally to make sure she was safe and taking her medication. After cutting contact with his mother, Van's condition noticeably improved. The constant cloud of anxiety and guilt that had followed him for years finally lifted. We started going on dates again, uninterrupted by endless phone calls. We were finally able to just enjoy each other. As for our honeymoon, Van wanted to make things right. He surprised me with a trip to Hawaii. This time, we both flew business class, and we had the calm, romantic vacation we had originally dreamed of. It was a beautiful trip, one that helped us reconnect and create a positive memory where there had once been so much pain. Overall, I feel happy and optimistic about our future, despite everything we've been through. My husband's growth and the effort he's putting into our relationship are impossible to miss.
If anything new happens, I'll be sure to post another update.